back to the Unpatched Gaming Podcast, where we share games. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm your host, Tyler Barrett.
Welcome to the Game of the Year episode for 2020.
Correct.
I'm very excited about it. We have some fantastic beer.
We do. This is a Tangerine Berliner Weiss from Firestone Walker. That's really all I have to say about it. Aged in French oak. It smells so citrusy. You could smell that across the room when I opened it.
Oh, yeah.
And so nice.
This is nice because, and I'm assuming it comes from the oak influence, it softens that acidity a lot. And so it's not like that. It's not that little sharp stab in the back of your throat. It's just nice. It tastes nice.
Wow, this is in line with a few saisons I've had recently. It's pretty funky. I don't know if I've had a Berliner Weiss, actually. I wasn't expecting that.
They don't usually taste like this.
Well, this is great.
Usually they're
a couple more bottles.
Usually they're a lot thinner. They're intentionally in Germany. They're kind of a festival drink. Even the kids drink it because traditional ones have like very, very little alcohol. And you mix it with like a little simple syrup or something, and that's your little festival drink.
What is the alcohol on this one?
Definitely not a normal one.
6.2. That's not particularly high.
No, Berliner Weisses though are like 3.
Oh.
Yeah, like really low.
Well.
But hey, this is so Firestone Walker, and they can do what they want because this is really good stuff. I'm a fan.
We wanted to take a moment to offer a friendly spoiler warning. Much of this episode is going to contain both minor and major spoilers for pretty much any game we're talking about. If that's something you're particularly sensitive to, you can check out the show notes for timestamps for all of the categories. Any category containing even a single major spoiler will be properly labeled, giving you the opportunity to skip ahead. With that, do enjoy the episode and have a Happy New Year.
But hey, man, we're gonna start off with kind of explaining the rules. No, the what kind of how we're gonna format this year. And it's gonna change and evolve as we keep doing this, obviously. But I wanted to start by just saying we do have categories. We are gonna just kind of go through those categories. We're excited about a lot of them, but then we're also kind of breaking them down in whether it's personal, just for us, between if it's just a Zach list or just a Tyler list, or if it's Unpatched selection.
Yeah, like our official selection for who has the best beer.
As a network. And that does include like Nick, my brother, the AV guy. He does kind of lend tiebreaker stuff. If he's played the game, he gets to put his 2 cents in. So and if the team ever expands, we'll obviously start including more of those opinions in there. But we do, we're going to go through a good chunk of categories. Do you want to kind of introduce them up front?
No, I think we'll just introduce them as we get to them.
And we will end with our Game of the Year selection, obviously. But we'll also be talking about the games that we played this year that didn't come out this year, stuff on our backlog that really had an impact on us. And that'll be kind of our nice closing little event. And I'm excited about it.
We've got more beer, too. We anticipate it being a pretty lengthy discussion, so more beer, and after the break, some Japanese whiskey.
Oh,
Zach knows his Japanese whiskey.
I love it.
Yes, you have definitely converted me. I think I prefer it.
Probably didn't
prefer it
take
over.
Too long.
No, not at all. Traditional whiskeys or bourbons, they just pretty consistently are a little too harsh for me. I'm a very old man with terrible heartburn. And it doesn't take much to really just ruin me for the day. But Japanese whiskeys have pretty consistently been a lot smoother.
They do go for that delicacy.
Yeah.
And even one that they would describe as smoky, like a kashu or something, it's still really balanced and really neat. I like it a lot. It's good stuff. Anyway, yeah, let's get going, man.
Yeah, we've shared a lot of games this year, man. I think,
and we only did like half the year, less than half the year.
Well, the podcast has only been going for, this is the 15th episode, so not particularly long, but we've been preparing for this the whole year. I think it was mid or early February that we started discussions on something that eventually became what the podcast is now. But this year, I think I've played more games and shared more games with you than I have in probably the past 4 years combined. I think
completed games.
Definitely. I think I completed 39 of the 53 I played this year.
That's awesome.
Which, again, is probably more than I have in the past 4 years or so. So I'm excited to share more in the coming year, and excited to talk about what we've gone through this year.
Yeah.
Now, Zach has agreed to indulge me. You see, one of my favorite things in the world is music. And one of my favorite things about video games is music. So we're going to do Unpatched top 3 soundtracks this year. And we're going to start with Hades by Darren Korb. Now, he's awesome.
Is this your number 1 pick?
No, this is my number 3.
Yeah. This is number 3.
Yeah, so we'll be going 3 to 1. This is my number 3. Now, there's been a bunch of good stuff this year. We'll get into why I think this one's really good. There's been a bunch of great stuff this year. Final Fantasy VII won the Game Awards, which I don't think was a very good decision. Final Fantasy VII has an incredible soundtrack, and I talked about the immediate nostalgia I felt as soon as I booted that game up.
Even the remix stuff, man.
It's good. It's so good.
Bow, bow, bow. Like, that one gets me every time.
That was a Wall Market,
yeah,
right?
the Wall Market remix. Oh,
I love
wow.
the battle theme. I forget what they're called. What the particular tracks are called, but the like the boss battle theme.
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
When you're raiding the Shinra facility and you're in the parking lot, the parking garage, that like the main theme from that track is incorporated a little more subtly into the general battle music for the parking garage, and sounds awesome. It's got a lot going for it, but I think these 3 soundtracks really stepped it up. The Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, and this is true of most soundtracks, is doing what any great soundtrack is going to do, and that is using its music to elicit various emotions or really set the tone of a scene or a place. Great character themes. All of these soundtracks are doing that, but they're doing something a little more. And first of all, the Hades soundtrack rocks.
Oh,
now,
it's
I
so
don't
good.
really like rock music very much. I listen to either a lot of folky stuff or electronic music. And with the number 1 pick, this is basically the kind of stuff I listen to all day. But this, first of all, has been a great gateway drug into some things, some rock music. We were talking about Tool and I forget who else. Point is, I've been listening to some things I normally wouldn't, and that's because of Hades. Now, I've been listening to Darren Korb since...
Our Lord and Savior.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Since Bastion, which is a really wild soundtrack. That is just weird. Great. I love it a lot, but there was a lot more consistency in the other ones. And this one is like really stepping it up for him. I have a soft spot for Transistor, but this is probably his best work. We'll know next week, or rather in the next episode with Pyre. But I'm pretty sure this is probably his best work.
That's so good.
Now, I sort of liken this one to Hotline Miami a little bit. It's not on the same level, but it has such a frenetic nature that lends to the gameplay that I think really elevates the Hades soundtrack. Now, in addition to that, it also uses the theremin in ways that are not typically used. It's the stereotypical like horror instrument, which is great, and I like when it's used for that, but it's used as an instrument, like just a main instrument in the ensemble and put up front a lot of the times, and serves many of the tracks in this game. So his use of the theremin is great. Some of the best tracks here that I think you should check out if you like listening to soundtracks sort of, outside of the games. House of Hades, that one really helps sell the entire feeling of the game. It starts off a little somber and like is introducing the Hall of Hades, the House of Hades, and then really gets to some of that hard rock stuff that you'll hear later in the song. Hard rock. This is coming from someone who doesn't listen to rock and roll. I get it.
He's saying Tyler's saying he's not very metal.
I'm definitely not very metal. No, this is a great introductory to all of the themes and the emotions that you're going to feel during this game, which is another thing that's great about this soundtrack. The themes here are consistent all the way through. It feels, you can remove most of the tracks from Final Fantasy and not know that there's strictly a Final Fantasy VII track. Unless, you grew up with that, you have some particular nostalgia. There's not a through line to that soundtrack as there is with Hades and my next pick. So another one, Mouth of Styx. I just really like the progression there, and that's sort of what I mean when I get sort of that frenetic accompaniment to the gameplay with Mouth of Styx. And then Rage of the Myrmidons. Now this is really just Darren Korb indulging himself. If House of Hades was a great introduction to the game, which I think it plays on the title screen, it's a great introduction to everything you're going to be getting from the game. Rage of the Myrmidons is 9 minutes of just encapsulating everything you felt during your 50 or so hours during this game. It is so good. Rage of the Myrmidons. Please go listen to that.
I'm surprised. So my favorite track in the whole game only plays in one spot, and it's when you get on the death barge. Mm-hmm. I love that more than anything else I've heard this year. Like, that is my favorite track, like solitary track from this year. It's just that one. It has that fantastic, just by itself strumming intro, and then it just slowly builds without ever like having this really heavy drop. It just kind of keeps building and building and building, and it just works really well. I love it. Very good. I've listened to it solitary just by itself many times.
One of my favorite tracks this year is probably that like boss battle, the more like elite enemy battle music in Final Fantasy VII. I think that track is so good.
Yeah.
And then whenever you're walking to Aerith's house, that's another great one. But the reason that soundtrack fell short of making our top 3 is because it's not as coherent as these other ones. And the next one, number 2, I'm going to give that to Ghost of Tsushima, which I think was snubbed in the Game Awards. I don't see how it could have won, aside from, people's nostalgia for Final Fantasy VII. I get it. But this is from, and do excuse me for my white boy pronunciation here, Ilan Eshkeri and Shigeru Umebayashi. So, I think this is an absolute epic. Not an epic soundtrack, but a soundtrack that is an epic. Unlike most video game soundtracks, which to great effect, as I mentioned, elicit those emotions, really tie you into the environment that you're currently in, or just like selling the scene. I get that. Most soundtracks do that, and they do so very well. Ghost of Tsushima is using its soundtrack to tell its narrative through the whole thing. The consistency of themes here and the use of motif in this soundtrack I find to be absolutely incredible. And what I mean by motif is you've got 2 very particular progressions in Way of the Ghost and Way of the Samurai, which if you know the story of this game, it will immediately make sense. Those are 2 like warring ideologies that Jin Sakai has to sort of deal with and choose one as he's progressing through the story of this game. So you've got the progression of Way of the Ghost and Way of the Samurai that then meet and intermingle in varying ways. One of them might be a little more subtly included in some tracks while the other one is dominant, or the other way around. But they're introduced together in other tracks throughout the whole game. And so I've actually got a playlist on our website that not on our website, but rather our YouTube channel. If you'd like to see why or hear why the soundtrack is so incredible, it includes Way of the Ghost, Jin Sakai, Way of the Samurai, and then they start meeting those progressions in Reckoning in Blood, Honor and Ash, Sacrifice of Tradition, and finally, at the credits, Way of the Ghost again, which I don't know exactly how you get it. Maybe it was just based on my ending, but there's the farewell version. Either way, both of them have lyrics in them sung by Clara Uchima, and that really just, the song takes on a whole new weight. It's the same song, so it's not going to incorporate the other progression from Way of the Samurai or Jin Sakai for that matter, but it takes on a whole new weight. That's incredible. I've not noticed that in a game. I won't say this is the first soundtrack that has done that. Of course, I'm not going to make that. That would probably be an ignorant statement. It is absolutely the first one that I have noticed that that does something so incredible, marrying its narrative to the music like that, or its music to the narrative rather. And then I also want to shout out No Mercy in this game. The first time it plays is in the intro when you're not sneaking into the castle because you're still like in the full mindset of a samurai. You are walking up the hill, you are going across the bridge, and you're saying, "Challenge me." But
face me, Sekiro.
Sure. There are three distinct sections of this song that all that shift every about a minute and 20 seconds, I think. And at first it's like, oh, this is pretty good. Some like sort of like it sounds like hunting. You're hunting someone, but of course that's not what the samurai is doing. And then right when you as the listener are like settling into the theme that they're going for there, it's like a really jarring shift into some more intense battle. And then once again, another jarring shift about a minute and 20 seconds after that into really like visceral combat music. And then it just stops. And I think it's great. It's sort of like my senses were kind of overloaded with that song. I think that's a great one as well. But we're going to go on to number one. And I've preached about this soundtrack all year.
And nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Wasn't even recognized. The game wasn't even recognized in the Game Awards. That is Creaks by Hidden Orchestra. Listen to me right now. My sort of affinity for this sort of music aside, I think this is one of the greatest video game soundtracks ever made.
And for once, I agree with you.
Really? Interesting.
I've listened to the whole thing probably 10 times.
Wow. Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that.
That doesn't happen with me. Like, soundtracks are very low on the list of things that, like, I prioritize as something outside of gaming. It's not, I don't listen to soundtracks very often. I do it to indulge Tyler, and that's about it. But I think that this soundtrack is something in a
You
league
haven't
of
even
its
played
own.
the game yet, man. Wait till you
I
play the game. All right. So huge soundscapes here. Not in the way that Ghost of Tsushima is an epic, but this is like if you listen to music to sort of allow your imagination to run wild, this is creating massive soundscapes. And like I've just played this going to sleep, and it creates these weird worlds. I find it to be incredible.
And the way it builds on itself is
so
nothing short of actual mastery of the craft.
Yes. Each track here is hugely layered, like to the point where the way it's incorporated into the game, which I'll get to in a moment, each track is basically an entire soundtrack unto itself. So the way it's incorporated into the game probably required very close communication with the design team. This is a puzzle game, by the way, a puzzle platformer. So really close communication with the design team to have it implemented and I guess written in the way that it is. Again, a lot of layers here. And the way it's implemented into the game is that when you enter into a new area, like, you know, any good robust puzzle game, I think each area is going to have some new or maybe evolved mechanics, so puzzle mechanics. And that's true here, just like in The Witness, maybe. You know, each of those distinct areas have different ways to solve those puzzles. But as you enter into that new area, you might get some really subtle layer playing for the first couple of puzzles. And as you start solving those, or let's say you solve just a piece of a puzzle, you'll start to get an instrument leading in from the next layer that's going to be introduced to the song. And by the time you get to, so it's a bit of a hint system, actually, to tell you that you're on the right path as you start hearing those new instruments. And then when you finally move on to the next puzzle, you've built this entirely new layer to the song. And by the time you get through the end of the area, you have the tracks you're hearing on the soundtrack. I think that's absolutely incredible to be made a hint system and then introduce the song that way. There are three here that I think really, really sell it. You know, I mentioned the soundscapes here. Attic, which is the second track on the album. Attic is really gonna get that across. Palace End is a really like sad and somber song that is gonna do a lot of the same stuff that Attic is doing, but towards the end of the game, and then if you're listening to it by itself, it's just creating a very different soundscape. And this one's a bit of an odd pick, but Learn Step Turned. This is very different from the rest of the songs on this track. It's dark and sort of otherworldly like the rest of the album is, but it's also like got a lot of funk to it. It's pretty groovy, and I was trying to think of how I would describe this song, and I don't think there's a better way to describe Learn Step Turned than Jazz Night at Jim Henson's Creature Shop. But that's what Learn Step Turned is, and that is Unpatched Gaming's top 3 soundtracks of 2020. Zach, thank you.
Yeah, I guess that's
for
it,
giving
guys.
me that
Thanks
time.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, that's the episode. See you later.
That's the only reason Tyler wanted to be here today.
Yep.
No, that is good stuff. I'm glad that we have someone that can speak to that stuff intelligently, because I cannot. I am extremely musically illiterate. I like Fall Out Boy, so that. Yep, that's a statement that says it all for you, and I have no shame in that. So that tells you even more. And then let's move on. Let's just kind of start going through these, and these will be more kind of discussions probably, because I will probably have way more hopefully intelligent things to say about them. But art direction, what's number 3, man?
Number 3 is Creeks. Again, snubbed. I really honestly don't know how this was not recognized in the Game Awards.
And I mean, it's one of those games that, like, when you look at a screenshot, you wonder, how do you even, like, tell where you are? Because it all blends so well together, but it does pop. And when you're playing it, you are able to identify where you are. It's honestly impressive.
Yeah. And it's so incredibly detailed.
If you just look at the, honestly, the cover image for the soundtrack, that alone evokes so much, like, story and richness. Like, you just it's like looking at Edith Finch, the Finch house.
Yeah,
you're just like, I want to know. Like, and that's
Absolutely.
what that does. It's incredible art
There's
design.
a lot of history in the background. You know, the game isn't a particularly narratively heavy game like, you know, Braid or The Witness. There's a lot more going on in those puzzles. This is a pretty straightforward puzzle game, which we're not really talking about the game right now, but yeah, you're getting so much of the history of this place just through the background, just the little bitty details, which there is a seemingly infinite number of little bitty details.
Absolutely.
It's really incredible. I think it is a masterwork in art direction for games. I really think it's a shame that it wasn't recognized, at least nominated.
Yeah, we love you guys. Don't worry. We're here for you.
Tsushima.
Yeah,
Ghost of Tsushima.
That is our second.
That was our first episode. We talked about Ghost of Tsushima.
Well, our second episode, RIP episode 1.
Yeah, that's
the lost episode.
Correct. The lost episode.
Hopefully one day we'll have a SpongeBob SquarePants style lost episode.
Oh,
where you don't actually watch the lost episode until the very end.
If we make it to like 5 years, let's just play those games again.
That's fine.
And see what they're like.
I'm okay with that.
So Ghost of Tsushima, we were pretty meh on when we first played it. Now, unfortunately, it has not really grown on you the way it's grown on me. I still agree with...
We do have pretty different priorities when it comes to games.
Yeah.
So I can see that. And I am not going to be the person who says it's a bad game.
It's definitely not a bad game.
That is the furthest thing from the truth.
Absolutely not.
You'll see it show up on a lot of these categories, honestly. Yeah. It's a good game. It's just didn't click with me. And I think I'm the first to admit my favorite games in the world have problems, but the things that they do well are things that I prioritize and I'm willing to forgive. And in this case, the things that this game does well typically don't fall in line with my priorities, which is fair. But one thing that it knocks out of the park is the art design.
Yes.
I mean, and everybody says it. It's obvious. The use of color in this game, not only to identify like different areas, but just your character, who you're playing as, the different outfits, what other people are wearing, the color of the leaves, the structures in the game. It's an incredible sense of place.
It is, absolutely. And I think something that they've done here that I've not really seen even attempted really in video games before is deliver that reverence for nature that I think maybe like classic Japanese culture, I don't know about today, but that I have seen to be apparent in classic Japanese or just otherwise Eastern cultures, a reverence for nature that we in the West don't really have.
Yeah.
And it really comes
the
across
opposite
here.
of Manifest Destiny. Yeah, I agree with you 100% though. I think Ghost of Tsushima is some I get the feeling that they walked up to each team, like the soundtrack team, and he said, tell your own story. And then they go to the art team and go nuts. Like just go nuts and hand us whatever you come up with. Because I feel as though this kind of talent is in many art teams in the video game industry, and I feel as though they're often directed a certain way, and I like to see a development team just kind of, or a production studio rather, just hand the keys of the kingdom to these teams and just go, express yourself, do something unique. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's plenty of ideas that hit the cutting room floor, and I bet they're great too. I'm really impressed, honestly.
Yeah, I'm happy that you recognize it, at least for that.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
What's number one though, Tyler?
Number one is Hades.
And I think the reason we decided
it's going to be a theme here. Yeah. By the way.
Oh yeah. I think the reason we decided on this was because of how integral the art style was to the game itself. Right? So, I mean, you have, playing the game, the things that are supposed to pop out. Information is very clearly presented to you for a top, like an isometric hack and slash, and which is typically a very over the top, difficult to follow kind of game. And they present information very well, but what it really comes down to is the character designs and how in a game where you have a static character, just image on the screen for whenever you're talking to someone, the amount of, and sometimes they have 2 or 3 different ones, right? But the range of emotion and connection that I feel, honestly, just far outstrips many games that have, fully realized, beautiful 3D animations for their characters. It's again one of those things where the art team really got to express themselves and brought a character to like the second you see Poseidon, you know exactly what kind of dude he is.
Yeah.
Like the second you see him, everything about his character design communicates to me how I'm supposed to feel about him. And it's cool because characters that change, or characters who, when your relationship changes with them, will sometimes get a new animation. A new image.
Portrait.
Yeah, character portrait when you're talking to them. And because of how it's changing between you, or just because of their changing, it's really quality. And just to be able to communicate, a game that is so founded on characters and the long-term relationships you're developing with these people, the way that your gameplay influences those relationships, it would really, really struggle, I think, without such a strong artistic presence in these ideas. And even when you're in the House of Hades, just walking around, everything in there is, every little detail, every tiny little crack in a column is so essential to presenting the world that you are inhabiting, and it just knocks it out of the park.
So hats off to, she might have a team, but
she does.
She's leading the team, Gen Z.
Oh, she's
so good, and she's been there since Bastion,
and she knocks it out of the park every time.
It's so clear. She is a really, I think, a force in the industry. I'm so happy they have her.
Yeah.
And she's so good.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
so
just
good.
look at the design for Red
Yep.
and Transistor. I mean, these iconic designs.
Yeah, we were watching No Clip, and so the original character was supposed to be a male, and I think have like the ghost of his lover or something.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, how do we get, like a woman to carry this giant sword and like come across as this strong, this like strong force? And she's like, give me a minute. And really, it took her like a couple minutes to whip up a character designer that like, oh, that's 100% what we're doing.
It's just she's
she's
an
very
absolute
good.
rock star.
Yeah, I'm excited to play Pyre. After playing Hades and seeing the like huge eclectic cast that they're able to make, because Bastion and Transistor were very small casts.
Yes.
I mean, Bastion had 3 characters.
Yeah.
I guess 4, but I'm excited to see Pyre. There's a bunch of characters in that as well, and a little
specifically ones you're supposed to develop relationships with. So it's
so I'm excited for us to play that. It's going to be our first game this year, but yeah, Hades, art direction. Now, sort of playing off of that, we're going to talk about facial hair.
Oh yes, the
Now,
most
this is gonna be,
important category that we're going to discuss today. Who won best facial hair?
Yeah, this was going to be a personal discussion, a personal list, but there's really no way to disagree here.
No,
so this is just the Unpatched official
Official.
facial hair, best facial hair of 2020.
Who's number 3, Tyler?
Don Corneo, what a freaking weirdo.
Oh, dude, and I mean, you talk about jiggle physics. His belly
Yeah.
is. I want to know how many hours.
They took more time on the belly physics than they did on the boob physics in this game. A
And-
Japanese game, mind you.
Yeah, and I commend them for the quality of that beer gut. It is legendary, but almost as legendary is his disgusting, obviously, just rat bag of a human being.
Yeah, he's
hair.
really gross, but he's kind of a fun presence to be on screen.
Yeah, like for someone who is absolutely disgusting, I feel bad at how often I want him to still be on screen. And his facial hair just completes the whole look.
Yes.
It is disgusting. It's the kind of facial hair you'd see on someone who like has to come up to your door and tell you that they're they're a sex offender.
Yeah,
That's the kind of
absolutely.
facial hair that I'm
100%.
It just matches perfectly.
But since he's running that sector, that's not a law that's on the books.
No, for sure.
Second, we have Kutan Khan from Ghost of Tsushima.
He's wow.
So he's the villain here, and I want to have a presence like him one day. That beard sells it. Really does a lot to sell it. It's so perfectly maintained, and adds a little bit.
What did you compare it? You compared it to the.
I did.
Yeah.
I compared it to the scene in Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
When the villain, it seems like an odd scene. It does if you're not reading too much into it, but the villain takes time to shave himself. He has many servants. He doesn't do much on his own, but he takes time every night or maybe morning to shave, get a very perfectly clean shaven face to help sell his presence and his demeanor. And I definitely think that's true of Kutan Khan, because it is like part of his demeanor. It really helps sell his intimidating nature.
Yeah, and it's already a great performance anyway. And to have that's kind of facial hair I lust after. as someone like this, it's incredible. It's that pipe dream, What a baller. But number 1,
yeah, take it away, man.
I mean, it had to be Lord Hades.
Absolutely.
And we kind of went back and forth because Kotan Khan has it's such an effective beard, but the fact that that beard is the symbol for the entire
house
game.
Sigil.
It is on the coins. It is on the floor when you walk into the room. It is it is just everywhere. Yeah. And, it's the first thing I think of when I think of Hades, is just that beautiful, twisted beard that makes no sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's impossible.
Bogus beard, but I love...
It's really unhealthy, unrealistic standards that I think the industry would do better to move away from is Hades beard.
Yeah, I'm already insecure enough about this stuff, guys. Come on. But no, it's really good. I'm very impressed with how, the devs probably saw this design and were like, oh, that's it. That is what our game will be, is this man's beard. And it's lovely. I love every second of it.
It's very, very good. Next we've got Spousal. Oh,
yeah, bring that beer over. I'm
all right. Yeah, set this to the side. I already got it poured. So we've got another beer. This one, do excuse the clinking.
No, don't. I love it.
Sure. This is a hopped saison from Fair Isle in thank you very much, in Seattle, the Great Northwest. I can't wait to go back to Washington and just do a brew tour. All
the West Coast is so good.
All of my a lot of my family is in Washington. Not all, definitely not all. But I visit them often enough. And next time I go, it's definitely going to be a several day long brew tour. Fair Isle is one of the saisons I've been drinking for a little while. Or rather, the brews that focus on farmhouse. So this is a hopped saison with Hallertau hops. I don't actually know if I said that correctly.
I don't either. Good
it's
team.
Like the last one, really filled the room with its aroma. This is going to be a pretty funky one, I think. You likened it to a funky white wine,
yeah.
right?
The initial smell gave me like. It's called a biodynamic wine, a biodynamic white wine, something with a lot of just interesting flavors.
I think you're right on the money with that, because actually this is not particularly funky.
Oh, you're right. No, you're right. It tastes very much like a white wine.
The Berliner Weiss we just drank was more akin to what I would expect from a saison than this.
It has that something that I don't like in beer, but many do. Again, it's on a lot of Hefeweizens, that moist towelette smell. I don't know. I don't really like it, but it really works here.
It does. That's, I think, sort of a staple for farmhouse ales. Your dad always teases me when I bring farmhouse over. Just like wet socks.
Yeah,
they're just like wet sweaty
My dad,
socks.
when it comes to alcohol, already doesn't drink very much, but he's extremely like, let me just have a Miller Lite. Like, that is my dad. And you know what?
No, he definitely has a little more appreciation than
Sure,
that.
But like, what's in his fridge is Land Shark and Miller Lite, and that's like, he's not gonna go out of his way. Like, he's happy to try it and will enjoy it, but he's not gonna go out of his way.
Yeah, he can appreciate it more than most. Like my dad drinks Corona, I think. Not Corona, Modelo. He drinks Modelo. That's his beer. And he doesn't really like much else other than domestic beers or, the domestic level of imported Mexican beers, like Modelo or Dos Equis. So that's where he resides.
We're trying to show you how, much better we are.
Correct.
Than our dads.
Than our fathers. We've come a long way. Yeah. So this is very surprising. It is much more like a wine, as you mentioned.
Which means I like it quite a bit. I like it a lot, actually. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's keep going though, because you kind of mentioned a little bit who was the best spousal material this year, and this is our first personal category.
It is. So you go ahead, bud.
Okay, I'll go first, and this is a little bit surprising, but my number 3 choice is a character from Spiritfarer.
Oh,
named
interesting.
Alice, and she is this little hedgehog lady.
Oh, poor Alice.
Yeah, and
I don't know much about those spirits, but I know about poor Alice.
Yeah, and she's I won't spoil anything for you guys. She has an incredibly beautiful character arc as you take her through her journey in Spiritfarer. But she's just a classic little old lady. She likes pies, She's just lovely. And there's this, like, beautiful adventurer hiding in her that never got to come out.
Oh, sad.
And who she is someone who has sacrificed everything for her family. But there's still, like, just starting to come to the surface as you're taking her home. is this adventurer that never got to be.
Oh,
and
that's too much.
oh my god, I want to just hold her forever and ever and let her be whoever she wants to be. I will make her as many pies as she needs, Tyler. So yeah, she's definitely my number 3. I love Alice. I think she's my favorite character from Spiritfarer.
Very good. This one is a complete opposite. Someone who I would let hold me, and that would protect me very well, and that is respectful and seems to be a good, upright man, and that is Jesse from Last of Us 2. He doesn't get a lot of time to shine before he is very unceremoniously killed.
Yeah,
that really will take you by surprise. But yeah, Jesse, he's pretty obviously to me seen a lot. Like Ellie. Maybe not as much as Ellie, but seemingly more than Dina and probably more than a lot of the people in their community. But he carries himself with a particular like air of authority that allows him to stand next to Ellie. You know, because Ellie has done a lot and seen a lot, and her survival skills sort of make her the leader in that group, but he's able to stand alongside her pretty comfortably, I think. But he uses that experience to, you know, carry himself differently than Ellie does. Obviously, we see it get the best of Ellie.
Yeah.
But yeah, he seems to be a very warm-hearted, comfortable guy, and would do you right.
Yeah, he's really a solid
good guy.
dude. I like him. I will actually skip my number 2, as I believe it is your number 1.
Oh.
So I will skip it, but I will say my number 1 choice is Sisyphus from Hades, because he is, and I love, this is something Hades does well, is it takes, you know, characters in Greek mythology who have died and kind of lets them carry out their arc in a lot of ways. It's something we didn't get to see, you know, from the end of the story. And Sisyphus, the selfish, death-cheating king, you know, sentenced for all eternity in Tartarus to push that boulder up and watch it endlessly roll down. He is an absolute gem.
Yeah.
Of a person, and he is selfless. He's gonna get more lashings for helping you out, but he's just so chill about it. But as you develop your relationship, this is spoilers for Sisyphus's quest.
Oh, there's gonna be spoilers throughout this cast, so I guess we'll let you know when big spoilers coming up.
Let you know when big spoilers coming up, but
definitely be aware of that.
Yeah, this is kind of, you know, very late game, but as you develop your relationship, he actually gets the opportunity to leave. You actually set him free of his contract, and he can leave, and he chooses to stay. And you're like, Sisyphus, what is wrong with you? Why? I just let you go free. And he's like, well, part of the deal too is he doesn't get tormented by the Furies anymore, so that's nice. He's like, well, you know, Prince, like, this here has made me who I am today. I don't like who I used to be, and so I don't want to go back there. I'm happy pushing Boldy up the hill, and you know, it keeps me in shape, and I get to talk with you when you come through every once in a while, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm like, you are who I want to be when I grow up, and if not, just marry me. Like, you are so perfect. And you know, just a character who shows genuine, inspiring levels of wisdom and you know, patience, and I like him a lot. But
much like this, you know, everything you're saying about him sounds like what I love about Special Agent Dale Cooper.
Oh yeah, no, that's
just
a
an
great,
unrealistically perfect Jesus figure. Not in that, you know, not like a Messiah figure, but just like the perfect being.
The you know, good Simpsons Ned Flanders.
Sure.
The neighbor who's just always does it right every time.
No, because Ned Flanders is also sort of a silly guy. You know, you've got to keep in mind that sort of wisdom you were talking about. That's a huge thing with those two characters.
I'd argue that old Ned Flanders, like,
I don't know enough.
Yeah, early Simpsons, he's a very different character. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. Who's your number 2, Tyler?
My number 2 is Nyx.
Mm-hmm.
Nyx is just so hot.
Yeah, Nyx is probably
not in like a I'm sorry, I gotta finish that thought. Not in like a, you know, like overtly sexual way, but like a really classy and mysterious, like, turn of the century gal, but also just has like so much authority about her that is very attractive.
Yeah. And it makes you pity that she's, your mom in Hades.
Sure. But she's not.
Yeah, but she's what she is. I don't know. I cannot agree with you more, because there are some extremely. I love. There's an early article published about Hades after it just went full release. It was no longer in pre-release anymore, and it just said Hades, a beautiful game about beautiful people, and that's true. There's so many like really peak human being kind of like even beyond that, just
and even the ones that aren't like you mentioned Poseidon. You love Poseidon, but Poseidon's like he has definitely done some drugs. He is your drunk uncle, but he is rocking that look.
Yeah, and he looks
like
great.
he seems like he's done enough drugs to get to the point of like this weird emaciated guy, but then like started working out again and bettered himself. So now he's like a really skinny but super toned bro.
Yeah, that is the most thorough description I've ever heard, and I love every second of it. But you're right, because Nyx is just and beyond just her appearance, which already communicates everything you need to know about her, she has this extremely gentle but firm way of talking,
incredibly gentle,
she, even when she's reprimanding someone in the game, it's very clear, clean, concise. She doesn't have to yell,
and your parents tell you, I'm doing this because I love you. Like, it really comes across. If you're being reprimanded or something, it's obviously out of love here.
Yeah, and she is she's out. You're right. She's just elegant and wonderful. And
elegant is a very good word.
Yeah, I love her very much. There's some late game dialogue talking about like kind of what was there between her and Hades, and it cuts deep, man. It's very good stuff.
And my number one.
Yeah, and my number two.
But your number
very
two.
Close. Number two.
Go ahead.
No, please.
Okay, Barrett. Final Fantasy VII.
Wow.
So I didn't play the original. Zach has told me he gets way more. He is like front and center in this game. He has so many poignant moments. Like, one of my favorite moments in the game was when the plate drops, and he's really trying to find Marlene, but also trying to find his friends that helps him carry out this mission, and he's desperately hopeful, and he asks Cloud, like, where is she? Tell me where is she? I promise, if you're wrong, I won't be mad. And Cloud is about to say something. He's like, no, don't. Who am I kidding? I probably want to kill you.
It's just
he's so good.
Yeah.
So many poignant moments.
Definitely the best drawn character in the whole game, for sure. For me. Like, he just
But the point that really sold it for me, he's already like a great dad. He loves his daughter so much, and he's such a loyal friend. But many people have told me this in my life, especially my wife, my sisters, several other friends and family members. People love my hugs. I just give the best hugs, I guess.
They're not wrong.
But I saw that after the plate dropped, and Tifa is really, angry that Shinra brought them to this. Like, they felt like they didn't have any other choice. The conflict escalated to that point. And Barrett tells her to harness that anger, or like, don't forget it, or something like that. Harness that hatred, I think he says to her. But she's so sad that she has to now become that, because she's sort of been off put by how hard Avalanche has been hitting lately. It looks like she was attempting to distance herself before the story really started, and she's really sad that she has to sort of succumb to that now. And that the whole conflict has gotten there. And first he tells her to harness that hatred, and then just brings her in for the best freaking hug.
Yeah.
And he's loyal. He's strong, and a fun guy.
Yeah. And
a really fun guy.
My reasoning is much simpler. It's his chest hair. Just wow, what incredible, like it's not too much, it's a good balance across the whole, like, extremely ripped, beautiful chest, and it's just like, it's enough to say I am extremely manly, but I'm not a carpet, it's
Speaking of
beautiful.
his totally ripped chest, he wears armor, but only on his abs.
What a winner. What an absolute winner. Yeah, I love Barrett. He's amazing.
So that was top 3 spousal material for 2020. Zach, tell us about presentation, will you?
Yeah, so presentation is something that, we have talked a lot about already this year. I think it's been picking up a lot in the industry, the focus on just extremely clean. A good example is, Red Dead Redemption 2, right? Something where the game is presented in a way where you are, you move slowly through snow. It takes a long time to ride places, but because of that, they're allowed to play with the sound and the way that Arthur reached down to search a cabinet. The gaminess is stripped out a lot, and they're trying to present you a world that is far more immersive and believable than video games have been capable of for a long time. God of War, another really good example. Again, the camera never cuts; it just comes in closer and moves. Simple design decisions like this, used with modern technology, really bringing the idea of a cohesive and fluid game together. Death Stranding, another great example.
In addition to those things, also just the various components of your game all as seamlessly as possible working together. Your menus, your moment-to-moment gameplay, your narrative, your music, and the visuals. As many of those components as can perfectly come together and as seamlessly come together as possible. That's what makes for stellar presentation. And there have been some really greatly presented games this year.
Yeah, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. So let's start out. Our third choice this year is a little simpler.
Hades.
Yeah, a little simpler.
We talked about the art direction. Gen Z did an incredible job, and Darren Core. We've really mentioned 2 of the huge pillars of this game's presentation.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, the gameplay. It is consistently stellar. I'll use that word again. All the way through, even if you're playing for 20 hours or if you're playing for 80 hours like you did, it is consistently awesome all the way through. And the voice work here is incredible. The dialogue almost never repeats. I've put like 50 hours in. The only reason I have heard a repeated dialogue is because I save scummed one time. I quit. I reloaded a previous save. Which, if you go into the files, there's maybe you don't know. If you go into the files, there's like 9 or 7 auto saves from before. Or not auto saves, but it keeps your previous saves. And you can just like change the file name. So I was trying to see if something would work, and it didn't. And I didn't want to waste those resources for that little test. So anyway, the only reason I heard repeated dialogue in nearly 50 hours was because of my own doing.
Yeah.
So
I put 88 hours in this game. The only repeated dialogue is stuff that is, when there's not a full text box with the character portrait. Just like a character calling something out.
Oh, I wouldn't quite.
Sure.
After the first time you encounter a god's boon in a run, they will come up and say something new and further their story, maybe.
Yeah.
But then if you go to the shop and buy one or something, it's just like, oh, you found Charon, or just something like that, something simple.
Yeah, and I don't, honestly, though, it's just the budget required to have that much dialogue for a 90-hour playthrough.
And there's such a small team.
It's baffling.
But they do incredible work. And, I find it hard to agree recently with what is his name, Jim Sterling. I used to watch Jim Sterling pretty religiously, and then for one reason or another, I don't really know, just sort of started watching other content. But I did watch his Game of the Year video this year, and Hades is Game of the Year, and he brings up really a difficult to argue point. it's such a small team. This game can net you 100 hours of play if you want to, and it's an astronomically smaller budget than many other games, certainly AAA games, and
Triple A.
and was in early access, but used that early access to great effect. Supposedly mandated vacations, zero crunch, which I have maybe certainly some dissenting opinions about crunch, coming from 11 years in the service industry, but he's right. Like, they are doing it right.
Yeah.
And before Hades, I would say that they're my favorite studio. Definitely after Hades.
Oh yeah.
Like, they did something pretty incredible in a decent amount of time. What was it? 3 years?
I think so.
Yeah, 3 years is pretty standard development time, but they released a product that really is unlike
Unmatched. Yeah. Unmatched.
It's pretty incredible. Number 2, we've got Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, talk about presentation.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is pretty incredible.
That's the number one thing everybody talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
It is. We already talked about the art design, the art direction here, and the music. Those are two pillars that I would say tie into presentation.
The focus on it's not perfectly authentic, but the authenticity of sword combat for that time. There's a great example where someone pointed out to me on a Discord where he stabs someone, a lethal stabbing, but they're probably still going to be alive, and so he will trip them so that they can't retaliate against him with their last breath or something.
Interesting.
Like, just little moments that are like actual sword fighting techniques that go into that game.
Oh, you mentioned little moments. I didn't remember this until just now. You can press down to pray, and usually it's at an altar or something, and you'll get a little like mini cutscene to show the pretty environment or something. But you can walk up to a dead body and pray for them. Like most people aren't going to do that, but I just tried once. He will, as you're riding past, massacred villages or whatever, he'll comment to himself on, really the sadness that is sweeping its way across his home. So I tried. You do some of these things in Breath of the Wild. I doubt they'll do anything, but I got off my horse. I saw this pile of dead bodies, and I, swiped down to pray, and he'll pray for them.
That's amazing.
It's really incredible.
Yeah, and it's that, and it never, until you go to the menus, it rarely feels gamey, like what you're looking at. Like, obviously the combat's pretty simplistic, and, that can feel kind of gamey, but the way you look at the world, interact, and climb, it feels like you're watching someone do that. It's impressive.
I do think the climbing is a little weak.
Maybe
because the last open world game I played up to that point was Breath of the Wild.
I just mean like what it looks like.
Sure.
And when he's climbing, and because Breath of the Wild, you just
like
gripping whatever surface. Like, Link is obviously just so strong he can crunch his hands into a stone wall.
Or he's like some sort of chameleon lizard thing.
Regardless, it's amazing. The gameplay effect of it's incredible, but in terms of what it looks like and how it's presented to the player,
sure,
Tsushima looks like you're watching this guy climb this surface. Sure, he's a little superhuman, but like you're watching him do it, and it feels like human movement, and it's impressive.
Yeah.
And then not even to mention the one-on-one sword duels. The way those are presented,
so good.
You mentioned the opening battle. Just how chaotic and huge it feels, like you're watching an old samurai epic
on Kodama Beach. Yeah. So back to the soundtrack. There's a track for Kodama Beach, and it's not intended to be this nice orchestral piece to play every time you're there on Kodama Beach. That track is there to tell you what happened at the Battle of Kodama Beach, and it does so very effectively. Everything really ties into this game. We might not enjoy the moment-to-moment gameplay as much as everybody else, and I do think the first act of the narrative is pretty weak. But this game ties together in ways that most games did not this year, and is a pretty stellar package, I'd say.
Only one that I can think that would beat it in terms of presentation.
That's correct. And really, I don't know how you're going to argue this. You might not like the game. You know, it's been beaten to death on the internet. But no one's going to present to me a successful argument that any game was presented better than Last of Us 2.
Just break the glass.
Yeah.
Like, just the effect, the visceral sound, the feedback to the player.
The visceral sound, the sound design, man. Every time I was killed by so many clickers. Every time I was killed by a clicker and it bit some string of skin off of my neck, I quivered.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, when I'm melee attacking an enemy, it doesn't feel like I'm going through a melee attack animation.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it feels like this is an intentionally designed, natural based on how I'm positioned. Mm-hmm. It changes. It feels like, you know, I'm as if I was in a VR experience swinging it myself, right? It doesn't break immersion by going, and here's your attack animation. Yeah. It's definitely incredible. The way the characters recoil, the way that the guns recoil, and the way the characters interact with...
Like that hunting pistol.
Oh, the hunting pistol. The way that they even slip through a crack in the wall. You know, I'm in consistently every single time I booted that game up was impressed anew with the presentation. It might be, it's a contender for the best presentation of any game ever.
If it is first, it is second only to Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, I mean, and I would put God of War pretty close up there as well. Maybe not.
I don't know how close I'd put it, and I also didn't finish God of War, unfortunately.
But just the way that...
It's high.
Sure, but where God of War falters is, yeah, the combat animations do feel like combat animations. But, you know, I would say Last of Us is probably my number one pick for any game.
Yeah, I haven't played Red Dead Redemption. I've just seen a lot, you know, like sun shining through the skin of your nostril, or you mentioned some of the animations, and I forget who I was watching, but they were comparing some of the like emptiness that we talked about in Cyberpunk. There's an animation that they had to speed up, like I think it was 3 times to get through this animation of a street vendor like cooking some ramen or something in Cyberpunk, but this guy butchering a rabbit.
Yeah, the butcher.
And he's, well, I don't know if it's the butcher. It looked like just some camp. I bet it is.
He's got a huge big old beard, and
I don't quite remember. It was in the woods. It was a camp. But some guy was just, it looked like,
I think it's a different guy. But yeah.
Just something that would be there, not really someone you would totally interact with, just like a little encampment. But he was butchering a rabbit. There were many individual little pieces of meat, skinning the rabbit, tossing the skin, making sure those pieces of meat are equally diced or whatever, scooping them with the knife and putting them in the bowl. And again, he had to speed that animation up to match the animation of this guy making some sort of Asian dish, but there's just like a static image in the bowl or in the wok that he was cooking in, and then he like pours it in and nothing is actually there. That game is incredibly presented.
Yeah, I agree.
It's but we're not here to talk about that game.
No,
it's,
sorry.
2 years old now?
Yeah. It's old news. Nobody plays old games.
We do. Yeah, that's what we're here for, man.
You're right. I totally
forgot.
Yeah,
so actually this coming year is going to be a bit different than the majority of our cast this far, because we were doing Game of the Year catch-up, but I'm excited to start sharing games again. Just things from our backlog.
Oh, dude,
shelf behind the camera, that's got like 400 or 500 games on it.
Yeah, and you're finally going to play Battle Network 3 for the anniversary this year. I'm very excited for that.
Absolutely.
Let's keep going, though, man. I would like to mention, in terms of presentation, this didn't make the list, but one that I did want to make sure got mentioned is Doom Eternal. People don't really talk about first-person shooters, especially something like an arcade shooter style, more like Doom, in terms of presentation. But, I mean, look at how a game like, Call of Duty presents information to the player versus how clean, immediate, and recognizable everything about Doom's presentation is. Both the first and Eternal. Both 2016 and Eternal. It's honestly dumbfounding to me that I can just flip my mouse around, look totally behind me, and immediately be able to identify what kind of enemies there are, what kind of guns I should probably be using, what's accessible to me to be able to like reach as a platform. And then of course, sure, it's a little bit more simplistic. The combat animations repeat, stuff like that. But
we're talking about, you also have to take into account the kind of game it is.
Of
so
course.
you mentioned the combat animations for God of War, maybe lowering it a little bit from these other ones, but that's because it's a combat game.
Sure,
you're focusing on combos and melee combat with 17 enemies around.
Of course.
So it's a separate kind of game.
Again, Doom didn't make the list, but I wanted to mention it because of I think that aspect of it. It outshines the other three we mentioned. Maybe not Hades. Hades does it really well too, but it is impressive to me, and I want to make sure it got mentioned.
Sure. Next one is encounters.
Ooh.
Our favorite encounters from this
Personal
year.
lists again.
Now, personal list here. Now, this could be a level, a boss fight, or just a puzzle. If we were talking about Creeks or something like that. I don't know too many puzzle games. Oh, we didn't play that one. Josh was recommending it to me. Subliminal or something like that, where
that was last year, I think.
You change the size of an item based on how far or close it is to you. Anyway, if you're playing a puzzle game, it could be a puzzle, whatever. A challenge that was presented to you in a game, something other than an emotional challenge like Last of Us.
Like playing Last of Us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, top 3 encounters. What do you got, dude?
Yeah, so I am a sucker for boss fights. I'm not going to lie to you.
So this list is all Final Fantasy?
3 boss fights. Not all Final Fantasy, but it's all 3 boss fights.
Okay.
So my number 3 choice is the Scorpion Tank.
Oh, yeah?
So the first boss fight in Final Fantasy VII, I think it's the best example of the accomplishment. We'll talk about this later. The accomplishment inherent in Final Fantasy VII Remake to take what was originally only allowed in QuickTime events and make you in control of those things and yet still feel as big and epic as, Colossus of Rhodes and God of War 2. It's honestly an achievement, and to be able to sell it so perfectly with that first boss. I mean, I remember every moment of that fight and the music. I cannot ever forget what it was like fighting that Scorpion Tank in the remake. It's incredible.
Awesome. There are a lot of good bosses in there.
Yeah,
I mean, the combats, we'll talk about the combat for sure. So this is a full level. This is Capitol Hill in Last of Us 2. Played through this mission a couple times, and I think it's pretty early on in the game. You're still in Seattle, so it's in the first third of the game.
Sure.
But this was the first time that the level design in that game is pretty good across the board.
I agree.
But this one really drove it home for me. It starts with you on a couple cross sections. I think you have to go through a convenience store or something on the corner. There's some guys on the roof across the street in the convenience store, and a few barricades put up, some cars, maybe just some little wall next to the sidewalk. This is a pretty traditional encounter. But once you're here, you go down the street, and there's an office building, a convenience store, and I think an apartment or something across the street. But the combination of stealth, the clickers that come out here, and the ability to use all of the weapons I had at that point. That was the first time I used the sniper rifle, and it was to great effect. But I also had to pay attention to enemies coming from behind me, and then trying to stealth some of those enemies before they got too close. It was really just using everything I had learned up to that point. I had a ton of fun with it, and maybe there are some technically better designed levels in that game. I won't know. I won't definitively say this is the best one, but I think this is the encounter that I had the most fun with in the game, and the first one that really drove home just how great the level design is here.
Yeah, it's the one that made me aware, for
really?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. That was the one that kind of turned me on to going, wow, this is some good level design.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, so my number 3 was Scorpion Tank. Number 2 is another Final Fantasy VII Remake boss.
Mm-hmm.
It's Leviathan. I did not grind the levels necessary to fight Bahamut. I didn't have it in me, but I did fight Leviathan way too early. I used every single ether elixir, potion, everything I had to beat him. The fight took forever. It was just, I mean, an absolute marathon of a fight, and I had nothing left when I won. I mean, one more attack and I would have been done, and that felt great. Just a really quality boss fight, again, from a game that is totally knocking the combat out of the park, but one that is so big and majestic and epic and just, I mean, obliterates your party in one hit if you let it. It's a real challenge, and it's the other side of the Scorpion Tank. Scorpion Tank's not a real challenge per se, but this one is, and it really puts you to the test, lets you kind of play around, makes you really think through your materia. I had a blast. It was a great fight.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So number 3 was Capitol Hill. I actually want to retract something. While someone may present a very reasonable argument that there's a better designed level, if I'm just having a discussion without looking at every level, I'm going to say that's the best one. So each of my picks here are for very particular reasons. So level design there. Now this one is my just personal favorite boss in Final Fantasy VII, just that I had the most fun with, because I agree with you about the Scorpion Tank, but this one I had so much fun with. There were a lot of cutscenes in this particular boss battle, and that was Arsenal. So,
oh man, yeah,
almost the end of the game. I think you've got 1 or 2 bosses after this one before you fight Sephiroth, and this is just Barrett and Aerith. They're sort of trapped on one of the lower levels of the Shinra office building. Well, I guess Red is there, but you don't get to play Red. He's just there and does some damage. But it uses cover in a way that hasn't been used in the game up until that point. Again, a lot of like really fun shifts of the boss here. And the way that I killed the boss was just unbelievably satisfying. So every, like, I don't know, maybe a third of his health, whatever. There's a few different segments of the boss battle where he incorporates some new moves, or I guess the robot incorporates some new moves, destroys some of the pillars so you have some differently placed barriers to stand behind. But in this last section, he creates 2 firewalls that create this sort of V, like straight out from him, and Aerith cries out, what are we going to do? Because he's charging up this like crazy beam that's going to kill everybody. And Barrett is just like, I guess we have to stop it. So Barrett starts shooting, because I was controlling Aerith at the time. And I switch over to Barrett to unleash one of his moves, and then right back over to Aerith, because she had just finished charging her ATB. And I had the skill, what is it, like Ray of Judgment. So I position her, because I knew it was going to play out like this, given the amount of health he had. So I run over there, and I position myself to send, like right down the middle, and cast her Ray of Judgment. And as she's like lifting up in the air, and she's sort of like, so she holds out her staff, and this crazy Kamehameha wave is coming out of it. And she sort of like lifts her other hand as she's like asking the congregation to rise. But as she's doing this, the robot finally blows up and I win. It was just so incredibly fun, and came after one of what I think is the worst points in the game. Like directly after that, it was really great. That being, what is his name? Rufus. Yeah, I think Rufus is a piece of trash. I think that's,
I won't disagree.
Honestly, one of the worst pieces of design in that game.
I agree. It kind of contradicts a lot of what
it does.
The other bosses go for.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate.
But that being right after it, I just had so much fun with Arsenal.
For me, so my number 1 is the first fight with Hades.
Really?
The first time you fight Hades in Hades. I should say the first time I beat him. That's probably a little bit more accurate, but it's honestly, it's hard to describe, because I was living between houses at the time, so I had just bought the new house, but it wasn't ready yet. We'd sold the old house, so I had a month where my wife and I were staying with my parents. and I had my little crappy little table set up. And I was, just playing Hades on this little setup over here. I didn't get to use my 2K monitor. I had this little 1080p screen, and
it is a little 1080p screen,
and it's fun. It does a great job. It's a game where you don't really have to sell it, on the weight of its amount of pixels. But I will say that when I beat him for the first time, because I had struggled, I was getting real frustrated. I'd fought him like probably 8 times. I was like, I cannot beat this guy. I thought I had some sick builds. I would get to him and he would just demolish me. The first time I realized he had a second phase, I about wanted to cry. But I will tell you, when I finally beat him, my parents came to check on me. Like, I was just screeching in victorious rage, and my brother didn't come to check on me, and he told me that he was like, oh, I know what happened. Like, he's like, I know exactly what happened. It's just sure. And it's because the investment you have in the story, the difficulty of the boss, how and how each run is different every time, and you're just trying a new strategy against them every time. And when you finally get that W, it's so clean. It's one of the best, kind of runner's high boss fight that I've ever had. You're playing so on point, and as you beat him more and more, you get more used to him and just start kind of having fun. But when you're just trying to beat him the first time, and you have the counter of how many runs it's taking you to get through your first victory, and it's just that pressure mounting for me that I just want a clean victory. I want to take him out. And let me tell you, the first time I beat him, I wrecked him. And I feel like I've heard that from multiple people. Like, the first time you beat him, you demolish him.
Oh, yeah. So did I.
Yeah, and it feels so good, man. I think it will. I'm not gonna talk too much more about it because it will come up later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it again, that particular moment later, which is one of the reasons I didn't put it on this list. But I wanted to sort of split up my 3 picks here, as I mentioned. So for number 3, this is my favorite boss battle, or rather what I think is one of the best designed boss battles this year. And actually, it's the Hydra from Hades.
That's a totally valid response.
I think the Hydra is such a great take on the classic, like, 3-tiered structure of many boss battles. He introduces more heads at every stage, and there's so many variations to him. And then within those variations, you can then vary the environment, which I did not have the courage to do. On the contract, change those boss battles.
Yeah,
I'm not 100% at Hades. I got to the credits. I got mom home, and then realized that, oh, she's not my mom, so maybe, I don't know.
Those are about Nick's, aren't you?
Yeah. But anyway, I have not 100% of the game, and I don't have it in me to do that, the other versions of all those bosses. But there are, what are there, like 4 or 5 different Hydras that you fight as you go through the game?
There are, I believe, I don't know the exact number, but yeah, each main head can vary based on any of the potential side heads that you get. So you have one that just, makes earthquakes. You have one that focuses on little wave beams. You have one that focuses on summoning other enemies. And my favorite thing about the fight is, it doesn't do that for a while. It keeps you on the main way that it was structured for quite a while. You go through it a couple times, and it's just the original way that you fought him. And eventually just it'll change. Hades paces that out so well. We'll talk about that.
I don't think we're going to talk about it again. There's not really another place to talk about this. But I was thinking about the 3 bosses in Hades today, and or rather the 4 bosses, and I think they're so incredibly paced and positioned.
Absolutely.
The first boss is really to test your mettle. Can you play Hades at this point? And the answer is typically yes. It might take you a few times to get through that first boss, but after that, you're going to get through the first boss in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It happens really quick. But with the Hydra, it really starts testing how you play the game. You've really got to pay attention to everything around you and use as many tools as you possibly can to finish him. Because, you've got the main head that's doing several different things, and then he shields himself to summon, I think, 4 and then 6 heads for the last tier. and
I think it's just 3 first.
maybe, but he's summoning more heads.
Yeah.
And he testing all of your skills up to this point. And then you take that into the third boss fight with what's his name? I forget.
Yeah, it's Asterius and Theseus.
So this is that more, I mean, there are 2 of them, and you do need to pay attention to what's happening behind you, but this is really close quarters combat, which a lot of that entire environment focuses on, with the guys with the shield, or you're not really running away from the chariots very much. Like you're going to be facing them head to head as well. At least I did a lot. So now you're focused on really close quarters combat, and then you take what you've learned from not so much the first boss, because that was just testing your general mettle. Taking everything that you've learned from your continuous fights with the Hydra and with the 2 combatants, and finally you have Hades, which takes all of that.
Yeah,
doing
Hades
all of those things.
Hades is just, I mean, he does so much damage. And what the best thing about Hades is he's using your moves. You're his son, so he gets the little blood boiling thing with his skulls, and if he hits you while you have one in you, then it does double damage or whatever. And it's I love that he has your kit. I think that's really well done. Yeah.
So Hydra for me, I think it's really, really good.
Masterfully designed, man. They knocked it out of the park.
Now we got some surprises this year. This is a really sort of loose topic here. Anything. E3 being closed, being canceled could be a surprise. A moment in a game, or fighting Hades could have been your big surprise if you didn't see that coming already. Really anything in a game. Just 3 surprises from this year pertaining to video games. My number 3 was...
Oh, I don't have them ordered. Was I supposed to order them?
Sure. Yeah, they're really not in...
I didn't find them very rankable. I just like 3 things that surprised me.
Actually, writing my notes here, I did not translate that appropriately or transcribe that. So we're going to talk about, right there, creeks. Just creeks in general. I've been playing Amanita Designs games for many years now. I think it was the Humble Bundle 3 or 4 in 2011 that Mechanarium came in, and I discovered them, and I've loved them ever since. There's only 2 of their games now that I haven't played, being Creeks and Pilgrims, but I haven't really paid attention to them too much in the past couple years, and Creeks was a huge surprise for me. It's not going to be anywhere else on my list, I don't think. It's certainly not a contender for Game of the Year. It is a pretty simple puzzle game compared to some of their other stuff being pretty obtuse. Not classic 90s point and click obtuse, but it's still pretty out there. This one, it feels good. It is incredibly well balanced. It teaches you everything you need to know. It doesn't feel too difficult. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, but the art direction and the soundtrack, I first didn't know this game was happening at all until like a week before launch. And then just the way the visuals and the soundtrack affected me, that was a big surprise for me.
For me, what surprised me probably the most this year was a quest from Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh yeah,
called Sinner Man. If you're playing the game right now, please just plan that quest.
Do this.
It's in a game that I was really having a hard time enjoying. That quest was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Really, I hope I go back to that game so I can play it.
Yeah, it's a very special, unique, and well-written moment. Really, re-solidifying after such a disappointment in a lot of ways, is that CD Projekt still has it. It's still there. They may have missed the mark on a lot, but what we loved about Witcher 3 and that kind of stuff, that's there still. And this quest was just out of this world. If you want to hear more about it, I go into a lot of detail on our Cyberpunk episode, the last episode we did. So check it out there if you want to know more. But yeah, that was definitely a huge surprise to me to find, especially so late into the game when I did it, and was already kind of disenfranchised in a lot of ways. So
So number 2 for me is a moment for a game from a game as well, and that is when it's big spoilers here. So if you don't want to hear anything about Last of Us 2, skip ahead for a moment. But this is when Abby is about to kill Dina, and so she's just beaten Ellie to a pulp, and Dina comes in to try to save Ellie, and like jumps on Abby's back with a knife. And Abby is a fighter,
Is a tank.
she is a beast and a soldier. So we talked about the survival aspect of Ellie and the soldier characteristics of Abby, but this little lady Dina trying to take on Abby, that was a dumb decision.
Well, she's already like really weak.
Yeah, but so she jumps on Abby's back, and Abby just like in a fluid motion throws her off and just starts beating her face into the like a brick. She's not punching her face, she's like grabbing her head and beating it into the ground, and then sees her dropped knife there and picks it up. And again, it's such a fluid animation here. She picks up Dina and the knife and is about to slit her throat. She picks her up, and she just looks so strong. Abby is a monster, and she's about to slit Dina's throat, and Ellie, she's like, she's pregnant, and Abby looks Ellie in the eye and says, "Good."
It's just awesome.
Oh my god. And I really, I cannot think of a single time that I have, maybe when I was a kid, of a single time I have ever reached out to the screen and exclaimed. I was so shocked. That moment really took me, well, by surprise.
That's amazing.
It was absolutely incredible and quite jarring, actually.
Yeah, it's. I really like that scene. I think it's really good. So for me, my next one, it's no surprise, I guess, is just The Last of Us 2 in general. I didn't think I was gonna like it. I've played the beginning of The Last of Us 1 4 times now.
Wow.
And I really have tried. I really have, and it just does not grip me. And so I was like, come on, Tyler, do we have to play this game? And you're like, yes, Zach, we have to play this game for the cast. It's going to be important to discuss, to know about. I'm like, fine.
Yeah, we thought there were a few games that we would not be able to have a well-rounded or even honest Game of the Year discussion if we hadn't played, and that was number 1 on the list for me.
Yeah, and so I booted up. I played the first couple hours. I'm like, all right, this is fine. But I played the whole thing, beginning to end, and it wasn't because I had to finish it for the cast. I was genuinely interested in the narrative. I genuinely was enjoying what I was playing most of the time. It's a good game,
Yeah.
and I was very happily surprised that I enjoyed it.
Happy to hear that. Very happy to hear that. It was considered for my list because I was also kind of turned off a little bit, but I think I sort of talked myself out of it. I was very much anticipating it, and then sort of talked myself out of it based on some of the things that the folks we follow were saying. And again, we said it during our conversation, at the end of our conversation of Last of Us 2. This is one of the finest examples of something that you really have to make your own decision about. I understand that there's so many games to play, and you find reviewers because their tastes line up with yours, and it's a great way to gauge what you should spend your time and money on. I get it. I watch a lot, or I did watch a lot of reviewers. I don't watch or read reviews too much anymore. Point is, get where you're coming from. I cannot think of a better example of something that you really got to play for yourself. So I want to encourage people that were maybe turned off. Check that game out. It is a force to be reckoned with. I think that game's incredible. But my number 1 surprise this year was photo mode in Ghost of Tsushima. I knew I was going to enjoy photo mode, but I had never used a photo mode up until that point. And it's really a shame that this is like the best possible photo mode. It is incredible because it ruined everything else for me. The only reason I finished the game on time was because, Zach was kind of pressuring me to finish it, because I put, I think in the the first 2 acts. So through the first 2 islands, I had put more time into photo mode than the actual game.
This is not surprising to me in the slightest. I'm glad it surprised him. Not even a little bit.
It was incredible. You can go back to our Instagram and see the first 15 posts were just photo mode captures, and I really like a lot of them have the Ghost of Tsushima branding on there because it just looks so good. Just that kanji written vertically in the middle of the image, it looks so good. But yeah, I put a lot of time into that, and I played photo modes. I used photo modes in Last of Us 2. Let's see, in Phoenix, Cyberpunk. What else do we play at the end of the year? Point is, those are big games. I used photo modes in that. Nothing comes close to Tsushima. Tsushima is incredible. You can change the weather. You can literally move the position of the sun. The system is using more hardware to run photo mode than to play the freaking game. I could hear my system, people make this joke about the system sounding like a rocket, but the second I started moving the sun, the PlayStation was like, oh my God, please stop. I can't take this anymore. And it does run at 0.2 frames a second while you're moving the sun. But yeah, you can control everything about that game. That photo mode. The only thing I wish were, a little more accessible is and this is true of any photo mode that I've tried so far, is you really only have a small space around where your character is to control the camera. You can't go out of this particular, whatever the boundaries are. I wish that was a little wider, but that's really it. Everything else is incredible. So yeah, photo mode in Ghost of Tsushima.
My last one is Spiritfarer being better than Animal Crossing.
Oh.
I know that's probably a controversial statement. I know Animal Crossing has its defenders, but my wife and I played both games together this last year. And I will tell you what, Animal Crossing was fun. Spiritfarer, we still will reference and bring up and mention the just the emotional journey, throughout. They both have extremely similar mechanics, the same fundamental idea as a game. It's just, you build the system up so it can feed this system so you can get this resource, you get that and get that and get that and get that and collect everything. And, it's the same thing, but the emotional investment that you get in Spiritfarer and the goals and how long it takes and how it lets you sit with a lot of that stuff, it's honestly incredibly impressive, and I would recommend it to most human beings. It's long. I will say it outstays its welcome, and that's why you won't see it show up on other parts of this list for me. But it really is special. It's a special game.
Happy to hear that. And I didn't have the time to play either of these games. I mean, I wasn't going to play Animal Crossing anyway. I've tried before. It's just not really for me. But I didn't have time to play Spiritfarer, unfortunately. But it's easy to compare them in that way, in that they're doing some similar things with their mechanics, but also they both came at pretty important times. A lot of people online have talked about the importance of cyberpunk. Animal Crossing. Goodness gracious, that is not the same thing.
Cybercrossing.
Oh, stop this.
No, it's gonna happen.
No, the important timing of Animal Crossing, and I think that's probably also pretty true of Spiritfarer. And I played the demo a couple times, so you get to, I think it's the deer that you get to send home, and so I know what the game is doing, and what it's going for, what it's attempting to, and seemingly does achieve. And I think similar things can be said of Spiritfarer. And so yeah, that's all. I don't really have anything else to say to that.
Beautiful.
Any definitive statement other than that? I think they can both be talked about on that same level.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. So on from surprises, we've got little touches. Really anything. Little touches. You mentioned, or I guess I mentioned, the the guy chopping up the rabbit from Red Dead Redemption 2, or digging into the various cupboards and stuff. Really, the small things that really add to the immersion of a game,
or just add to anything in the game. Just it's a little touch. Little touch means a lot.
Sure. What do you got?
What do I got? I'll tell you what. So my first little touch is from Carrion, and it's just how the monster moves. The sound, the little slurpy sounds.
It's good.
And
it's really good.
The way the tendrils, like whoever built the code for the tendrils deserves a massive award, because it's just what is gripping when and where and how you just kind of move so fluidly through every space. Just squeezing into a vent to like horror movie grab someone by the leg and smash them into their friends. Just moving in that game feels great, and I think that's just a special thing.
That is pretty awesome. And you mentioned when and where and maybe even why a particular tentacle is reaching out to this spot. It's pretty inconsistent, but to great effect.
Oh, incredible
So
effect.
you're trying to move up, but maybe a massive tendril had just reached out over here. Well, it has to first be retracted, and some smaller ones are maybe pulling you up slowly, and then a large one is going to reach out and help you pull you up a little quicker. That is super
Just
dynamic.
magic, dude.
Yeah, it's really, really something.
Yeah.
That's a really good pick. I did not put it here, but that's a good one. Let's see. Number 3 for me is nature in Tsushima. We sort of already talked about it, really getting across that reverence of nature from Japanese culture, and just the foliage in general. The grass in here has got to be better than any other video game. I booted it up again 2 days ago so I could talk about something else in the next section of the cast, but it totally reminded me that the grass here is incredible. The trees, the leaves, the particles, amazing. And when you're riding your horse and you're taking a turn, if there's some tall grass, Jin will just reach down and like feel the tall grass as you're riding. It's so good, man. So yeah, really just the foliage, and not so much the nature, because that I guess that's a little more
grass.
It's so good.
It's so quality.
So really the foliage in Last of Us 2.
In Tsushima.
That's what I meant, but also Last of Us 2 does have some really good grass.
Let's just have best foliage for the next year. So for me, my next little touch is Boldy in Hades. And it's
Boldy in Hades.
And it's Boldy in Hades because when you get
definitely a personal pick, not an unpatched pick.
So when you develop your relationship far enough with Sisyphus, he will ask you if you want to talk to Boldy, and you can talk to Boldy. Boldy says nothing. Boulder is a rock, and he'll joke with you, and he'll say, like, after you've talked to Boldy multiple times, he'll go, Prince, you know that Boldy is just a rock, right? and then Zagreus is like, what? And he's like, I'm just kidding. Of course he's not just a rock. And it's so good. But eventually you look down and you realize you can give him nectar. You can give Boldy nectar.
Yeah.
And it will actually minimally increase one stat for you.
That's really awesome.
And it's incredible. Like, it just because, like, it solidifies the Hobbes theory that Hobbes is actually real. It's just the parents who are wrong in Calvin and Hobbes. It's the same thing. If you don't think Boldy's real, look at that stat boost and tell me he's not real. I think that is just pure gold.
Yes, I will not disagree. Boldy is pretty awesome. And it was great to give him something. I didn't get that far in the conversation for Sisyphus to like throw you a loop.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah. But then, like, is he?
No, I'm fully of the Hobbes opinion that he is real and it's the parents who are wrong.
Sure. So little touches. This one, this game didn't get much recognition at all. Really no fanfare. This is from Amnesia Rebirth. That is the matches in Amnesia Rebirth. A lot of care and detail went into those matches. Like real believable, I guess, physics of a match and a flame on a match and how flames react to your movement or the wind around you.
And using it as a light
Yes.
source. Oh my gosh.
And how the light source pierces the darkness and does take time for you to see that you're using light now. It's really, really awesome. And, you know, maybe a little bit of this is just coming from our having listened to that Ars Technica documentary, or interview rather. But it does really come across. A lot of work went into a match. But in this game, it's incredibly important. And being in first person, it's like it's right here all the time. I've never seen something like that. That was really, really good.
Especially in a game that's a lot about being in the dark and not. And so I agree with you. I almost put that one on here. It's just such a good choice.
It is.
But my number one
stuff.
is from Paper Mario.
Oh,
Origami
interesting.
King. And it is the coffee shops in that game. Every once in a while, you can throw some, you can find a little entrance, little coffee shop door, and you go in it, and there's this cute little cutscene. You can order some coffee, restores your health. You usually don't need it, but it's just this, cute little, it's like Goombas after a long day of work complaining.
Yeah.
There's one at the end where they just give you a couple, like usually they're like, oh, do you want our super special latte, or do you want, our cappuccino deluxe extraordinaire? And this one's like, no, do you want a black coffee? And you're like, sure. And you take it, and it's like, that was it. And this is the last one in the game, I think. And you go back in, and you can go back and talk again. He's like, oh, do you want our super special love deluxe? And as my wife puts it, hell yes. And so there's like Birdo comes down out of the ceiling.
So incredible.
It has nothing to do with the gameplay. It has nothing, like, you don't need that extra health boost usually. You're usually doing just fine. That doesn't need to be there. But the fact that it is there makes it far better than it could ever be without it in there. I think that's a perfect example of little touches where it's just like, hey, let's just have this in here. What does it do? I don't know. I don't care. It's great. Let's just have it in there. I think people would like it, and I do. I like it a lot. Yeah. So that's my number one pick for sure.
Number one pick is not out of the ordinary. It's hard to argue. Probably pretty expected, and that's just The Last of Us 2. Nothing in particular, just anything in The Last of Us 2. You mentioned the glass breaking.
Breaking glass.
When you throw a bottle at someone's face, you got those glass shards in their face. When you walk out of a building in rain, Ellie will put her hood up. You mentioned the animations. Feeling really fluid and dynamic. Let's see. When you're behind a car or something, and the way the car might move a little bit if it's hit with or maybe it's the whole screen moving, but it sells that idea of like an impact happening when someone throws a grenade or something like that. Really just all of the little things that sell the immersion of Last of Us 2, I thought were incredible.
I agree with that.
I guess it's just a huge juxtaposition to Final Fantasy VII, but, if you're doing something as mundane as switching on a light or opening a cabinet, in Final Fantasy VII, if the prompt is here, but the character is here, the character would stiffen and slide over. But in Last of Us 2, you'll continue walking in this direction with a little bit of momentum or doing whatever you're doing and reach over to the cabinet. So you don't even have to go through the full animation of walking over to directly in front of the cabinet. That stuff is really, really good.
Yeah, I agree.
And
that presentation.
It's that presentation, really. So the next category here.
Unpatched category again.
Yes. This is going to be for innovation. Now, we had a little bit of back and forth here, but we finally settled on something. And number 3 for some of the best innovation. Now, let's actually talk about the category. This doesn't strictly have to be something that is brand new. We had talked about, though he didn't finish and I didn't play Alex, but the what is it? Liquid shaders in Alex. I think it's Jacob Anderson.
Geller?
Jacob Geller. That's it. Did a really interesting video on the intimacy of objects, focusing primarily on liquid shaders and Alex. That's awesome. That is something, that's a brand new technology. It doesn't have to be something like that, and in fact didn't make the list. It could be just a technique or a mechanic that was moved forward in a way that nobody else was doing, or presented in a way that is new. And so number 3, we've seen this time and again. And the earliest time I can personally remember actually like taking note of it and kind of being annoyed by it is, a big arrow pointing you which way to go. The first time I remember is Bioshock. You've got a giant arrow at the top of the screen turning in a direction. This is an evolution of something like that. And that's the wind in Tsushima. You can just, first when you put a marker down, the wind will automatically go somewhere. And you can literally follow the wind. What a show of confidence to not even have the option to turn on a minimap. Because this works. It really, really works.
And it helps
you
the immersion.
You never have to open the map again after setting a waypoint. You can just look at the way the grass is lightly leaning in a direction. It's incredible. And then if you need like a general reminder, like maybe you're in a rocky area and there's not too much grass, you can like whistle to summon the wind and you'll see this large gust point you in the direction.
Yeah.
It's new. It's not going to work for every game, unfortunately. So I don't think it will be widely implemented. It won't always work.
But the fundamental idea, hopefully, will take on.
Yeah, it's really, really awesome. And it took me a while to like really start using it to see just how well it works. But it's hard to describe just how awesome it is. So number 3, Wind from Ghost of Tsushima. Talk about number 2, man.
Number 2, this is one that I fought really hard for to be on the list, and that is the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's 2 things that impressed me about this. One comes from a big Kingdom Hearts fan kid. I loved Kingdom Hearts a lot growing up. I still love Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 a lot. Chain of Memories as well. Kind of fallen out of love a little bit, but I still have a big I'm a big fan of that series.
I've only finished Chain of Memories. I thought that game. I maybe need to play it again to have a definitive opinion on it, but I remember Chain of Memories being stellar.
Oh, it's fantastic. I actually recently replayed it 2 years ago. It holds up. It's a very good game. Awesome. I played it on Game Boy Advance. But I will say that I have not seen that kind of action RPG with a very big, emphasis on traditional RPG elements in it do much outside of what Kingdom Hearts has done. And I think that, so my first huge praise for the Final Fantasy VII combat is this evolves that. You still have a menu to select, but you're encouraged to switch between now multiple characters, because if you're controlling them, their ATB gauge fills faster. You have multiple ways to engage in what is, still at bare bones an attack button and a magic button, that kind of stuff, but it's so much more dynamic. And it's a lot less button mashy feeling at the end of the day. You feel like you're controlling a battlefield without being a fully tactical, experience. It's incredible how they use the slowed down time for the menu when you're going through the menu, and it never feels like combat's quite stopping. And especially as you get better at the combat system, it flows way faster. You start developing your shortcuts. It's so flashy, which leads right into what I think is the true achievement. Is it takes something that was reserved only for, God of War QuickTime events and makes you in control of those massive spectacle moments. You are fully in control of that. The way the combat plays out, because of how flashy and intense and, the particle effects.
There are many.
That the combat gives you. And because the enemies are going to respond to that in big ways and jump around the arena, the Hell House is a great example, just flying around the arena, and you're launching these massive magic attacks at it, getting up close, just smacking that house booty. It's so good. I'm consistently, every time I booted that game up, if there was some part that was, really sucking me out of the experience and starting to drain me a little bit,
you just have to go and smack that house booty.
Smack that. The second that the combat kicks back up again, it is so exhilarating. I remember the first time I used Faraga all on an enemy, and the game stuttered a little bit. Like, that's how big it was. It just felt great. I really cannot commend them enough for pushing that style of combat forward in a way, especially after something like 15. Final Fantasy 15 has a lot of problems, and one of them is that combat is stale, man. It just feels really stale, and this addressed all of that and more. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
Awesome. I'm not going to disagree, and I'm also not going to talk about it too much because I was never a fan of Kingdom Hearts. So I have not been able to witness that evolution like you have, but it was really incredible combat, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Accessibility is number 3.
Number 1.
That's what I meant. Yes, sir, you are correct. Number 1, just number 3 in my list here. But number 1, I think this is pretty important. Now, I don't subscribe to the idea that, Dark Souls needs an easy mode. If the reason for Dark Souls existing was not to... So what I mean by that is, if the creator's vision wasn't to give you such a difficult experience, then sure, maybe I'd argue that. I think, what was it? Maybe Amy Hennig, I think, was saying... Anyway, a writer on Mass Effect was saying, 6 or 7 years ago at this point, that she wishes there was a mode she could sort of skip combat with, because she works long days, she goes home, she has a family to feed, and she wants to experience Mass Effect. And the biggest pillar of that game is the narrative. And that's true of something like Last of Us 2, which is the winner here. The accessibility in Last of Us 2, one of the biggest draws in that game is the narrative. And there's combat it's a video game. There's combat in many video games. So for you to be able to experience what you want to experience in that game, there's an option for you. If you just want the combat in that game, well, you've got to go through the narrative first, but you could just go through an encounter run. Not even the exploration, just straight up, here are all the encounters. Your build is randomly drawn from a pool of things that you would typically have at this point in the game. So you might have 2 bombs, 3 shots for your sniper rifle at this point, a magazine and a half for your pistol, or next time you start, you might have a silenced pistol, a full magazine for your sniper, and a baseball bat. There's a pool there. It randomly draws from stuff, and it's providing you a challenge. If you want the narrative, you can customize almost every aspect of the enemy's AI here, which is awesome. Really, the customization here and the ability to tailor the experience to your playstyle or even your disabilities is
and it's
unmatched.
Because they want as many people as they can to experience it.
Yes.
And I think that's if that is part of your goal, then absolutely you should be pushing for these kinds of things.
And I think it's an important thing. Accessibility, but not to the I guess detriment of the creator's vision. Dark Souls is
not for everyone.
Not the hill I think people should die on. It's not made for everyone, and it's the point of Dark Souls is to be able to overcome something, to overcome what the creator has put in front of you. So I don't subscribe to that argument. Anyway, the accessibility in Last of Us 2, I think is incredible. I think it is number 1 on our list.
Right.
I do have a special shout out. I'd never thought of this, certainly never seen it before. I think it's really something incredible, and that is the phobia slider in Grounded. Now, I've not looked too much into this, so I don't know if there are other similar sliders, but I have seen this particular slider, and that is for arachnophobia. And your little kids you've been shrunk down for whatever reason. I don't know the narrative conceit there, but you've been shrunk down and you're fighting bugs and other things with sticks and nails maybe. But naturally you're going to encounter spiders, and some of those might be giant spiders or just spiders, I don't know, babies on their back, whatever. There are people with crippling fears of spiders, and the point of this game is not to show you creepy monsters. The point of this game is to have fun with friends, 4 of you running around in this like borrower style arena, fighting things, having fun. That's the point of this game. So to allow as many people as possible to have that, there's a phobia slider, and it literally changes the model of a spider to the point where it's just a floating cloud that you can fight, or maybe like a blob that will crawl on the ground. It completely changes the model to where it's not even a spider anymore, or it becomes more like increasingly difficult to tell that it is a spider. You know, if it's the eyes that really mess with you, or the 8 legs, it starts to become blurry, starts to then become blobby, then starts to meld. That seems incredible to me. I, again, have never even thought of that being an option. And then seeing it so well implemented here, I wanted to, give a shout out to that. But moving on from innovation, what do we got, man?
Next one is performances, and this is another unpatched category.
Mm-hmm. The next 2 will be.
And this is not going to be very fun for a lot of listeners, I don't think.
No, and really, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think there's going to be a lot to say that hasn't already been said. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's also hard to argue. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just every once in a while, you have a game where that narrative and the characters are the central focus, and you have a budget, and you have a mocap budget, or you have a
or maybe you don't have a budget and you just have Sony's wallet.
Yes. So in this case, I mean, it's just Last of Us 2 just sweeps everything. It sweeps,
and I made the argument loosely. I didn't want to make a firm stance because I wasn't even sure where I stood. Do we only put one Last of Us character? Do we try to give recognition to
the incredible voice work in other games, which there
like
are.
Hades.
Yeah, Hades has incredible voice work. I think that Ghost of Tsushima has some very good voice work, but
at the end of the day, we've got 3 to pick here, and I'm sort of gonna give a rundown, and then you can talk about the winner, because again, everyone has heard everything we have to say here.
Yeah.
It's Ellie and Joel. And finally, number 1, Abby. So that's Ashley Johnson, Troy Baker, and just a darling Laura Bailey.
Yeah.
As Abby. We don't think there was a better performance this year than Laura Bailey's performance for Abby.
Yeah.
Why is that, Zach?
And well, I will say just real quick the order that we chose. The reason that we put Troy Baker above Ashley Johnson is for me, I'm gonna be really honest, I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for Troy Baker. And I love his voice, I love his work. I think that those are 2 pretty much interchangeably incredible. I think all 3 of these are interchangeably incredible performances. I'm a sucker for Troy Baker.
But you also mentioned something that I will second, and it probably has something to do with the amount of screen time that Joel is given. Adds to the poignancy of every time he is given a moment on screen.
And every time he's on screen, he steals the show.
Yeah.
And that's...
So if he were as prominent as Ellie or Abby, then maybe he wouldn't have gotten that spot. Maybe it would be Joel, Ellie, and Abby. But because he's only got a few moments, and when he's there, he just steals the show. As you said, it really, like, there were some incredibly emotional moments here for me. Some moments where I just had to walk away, put the controller down and digest. And most of those were involving Joel.
Yeah, absolutely. But the reason we gave Abby number 1 was the reason Laura Bailey won is because you have 2 of the most well-known, well-performed, career-launching performances in video games with Ellie and Joel in 2013's Last of Us.
Yeah, it's only been 7 years, and they have become not Sony mascots, but mascots for the medium.
Yeah, and these are just, I mean, some Godfather level defining performances. You know, they're out of this world, and you bring them both back. Of course, they're gonna kill it. It's just obviously. So to bring in a brand new character, on a very bad note, for a lot of players, very bad taste in their mouth, and to be able to bring the same heavyweight level performance to where when she's on screen with Abby and Ellie, when she's on screen with Ellie and Dina or anybody else in this game, that she is right there selling it just as much as they are. That's an achievement in and of itself that gave her just that little extra edge.
Yeah. I won't disagree. I think she's incredible. I mean, I already love Laura Bailey enough. You know, I haven't actually played many of the games that she's been in. I've just watched, I watched, I think, most of the second season and some towards the end of the first season for Critical Role. She's one of the cast members.
My wife's
there.
a big Critical Role fan.
Yeah. And so that's really where I got to know her. So I just like Laura Bailey a lot. She's a lot of fun. And turns out she is absolutely incredible. I had no idea it was Laura Bailey until afterward.
Yeah.
I was really shocked. But those are our top 3 performances this year. And finally,
Before the break,
yes. So not quite finally. We have the best narrative this year. And I'm going to talk about the first one here.
Okay.
Number 3, Ghost of Tsushima. You know, there were a few things to talk about, or a few things to debate this year, but Ghost of Tsushima has really grown on me. And you know, I've been talking to you about it the past couple days, or the past couple weeks, really, especially when trying to solidify that list for soundtracks of the year. That narrative is it's the arc that I think is incredible. And the general idea for the story, those competing ideologies or worldviews, from a ninja to a samurai, you know, based on shadows and cunning, or you know, honor and stoicism. Those two incompatible worldviews, seemingly incompatible worldviews, that the main character has to struggle through, I think is really awesome. And the first act in that game is it's a little weak. It's introducing a bunch of characters, introducing the general plot, but after that it really starts to pick up. And by the end, you know, he does have to fully become the ghost. He's basically inventing ninjas, it seems like. But when you finally have to put everything behind you and you fully become the ninja, and you know, you win. It is a heroic moment. You finally win, but then the game chills out for a moment, and you've got that epilogue. You go talk to your uncle again, basically your father. He raised you in your most formative years, and wanted to adopt you, like officially adopt you in front of the society, since he's, you know, like Lord Chimera. That would be an official thing for him to do. But you just have such respect for him, or rather Jin Sakai does, even though Jin Sakai has sort of thrown away those old traditions, still has an incredible love and respect for his uncle. And his uncle is a high-ranking samurai, which is an order with very explicit hierarchies, very explicit rules and traditions, and he is tasked with killing Jin. So you have one final duel with Jin and your uncle, and when you finally bring him to his knees, the game stops and lets you make a decision to either spare him or kill him. What a difficult decision that was, because they both do make complete sense, but seeing that Jin still loves his uncle and has such a respect for his uncle, and knows that his uncle is 100% invested in, you know, believes the ideology of the samurai, I chose to basically spare him by killing him, uh, because that is the most honorable death. He cannot honorably face the council again if he does not, uh, rid the tarnish on his family name that is Jin Sakai. Uh, he can't do it. He can't even be a samurai anymore. So he wants that honorable death, and I gave it to him.
I didn't because I wanted Jin to live with it. I feel like Jin, it just kind of completes his arc a little bit more for me in my mind as a consistently further and further abandoning the way of the samurai to just to make him have to live with that. I don't know. It was a hard decision.
It was. I didn't want. See, I don't see that like you do, because he abandoned those things in a time of need, and realizes that is not a sustainable lifestyle, or rather a sustainable set of ideals to have a society propped up on, because there was a huge invasion. There is the rest of the world that does not follow those ideals, and they're holding them back from survival and furthering their society. So he understood that, but he still loves and respects his uncle.
But from a narrative perspective, it's more thematically consistent with his quote unquote downfall, I guess, from the way of the samurai. I don't know. I liked it. I liked the way it just ended.
It works either way, it seems.
Yeah.
And I do think this is it's one of the best things about that game. And I'm surprised, based on the way we talked about it when we launched the podcast, I'm surprised how prominent it is on this list. What's number 2, Zach?
So number 2 is going to be Hades. And the reason for that is because not only of how the narrative is presented, how your decisions in the game, your deaths, the weapons you choose, who you talk to first or second or third, that influences the relationships with the other characters. And as you continue to progress, you start to, as you get further and further, see the overarching narrative that is happening in the family house. And it's a story about family. I don't want to go too much into it, but to see your relationship with your father and your mother evolve and change, and how your actions influence their decisions, the absolute Greek tragedy level of you only being able to survive a couple minutes outside of the realm of hell, realizing your father's under that same weakness, essentially, that he can't leave either, and he's never even the one to tell you. You have little moments of bonding, honestly, as you continue to progress past the end of the story, of every time you fight your dad, you're just having a nice little bantering chat. One of my favorite parts is in the middle of fighting, goes, "How was your trip up here, boy?" And it's like, and it was very good, father. And they're like, you're in the middle of beating the crap out of each other, But the progression of, and it's not so much like the overarching story is pretty simple. It's about family and the importance of that and keeping that held in high regard, but each individual character, as you build those relationships and watch them change throughout the narrative, straight up, even the Hydra's name changes. His actual name that appears at the top of the screen with his health bar changes because Zagreus has fought him so many times. He goes, "How about Lerny? That's a good name."
Oh my god, it does?
Yeah, and he's like,
I didn't notice. I've never read the...
Yeah, so it's like the Lernarian Hydra, right? But it eventually just changes to Lerny as his name. It impacts important to the game, and just to be able to develop those relationships and characters, you only have a back and forth of a couple dialogue boxes each time you talk to someone. It's very short, very sweet, to the point, and you'll just realize something brand new about a character with a little tiny hint of dialogue right there. One of my favorites is Nyx talking about what it was like pretending to be with Lord Hades. They had to pretend that they were she was Zagreus's mom. Mm-hmm. And having that, and they have this conversation very honest about it, and he's like, "Wow, I wonder what it would have been like if it was actually real." And she just has this moment of And she pauses. I wonder that as well, child. And she has her face turned away. And it's just like, and it's more elegant than that. That's just me paraphrasing. But man, that is good writing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is good writing.
And also the delivery of it is really something pretty new. I've not played a game that delivers its narrative like that. Or even if I have, not a narrative of this caliber.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a really special game.
It's a good pick for number 2, absolutely.
And you're right. It's the way they deliver the narrative that makes it special.
Yeah, for sure.
To wrap up before the break, though, the last game, the number 1 best narrative, is going to be The Last of Us Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Probably very unsurprisingly. We talk about this a lot more in depth on our episode on Last of Us 2, so if you're interested, definitely go check that out. But what sets this narrative apart, and why, I've heard people call it a simplistic narrative. I've heard people call it, babies first story, like, very cheap tactics to get you to emote. And I disagree. You see an incredible use of characters bouncing off each other to not only like reveal where they're at right now, but then help them grow. So, my favorite example is Owen and Abby. They're in love, they're young. Owen finds this aquarium, and they're just having a good day together,
that's a good moment.
Yeah, it's a really good moment. They're just having a good day together, and, he makes a move on her, and she stops him. And so, being a classic good 21st century boy, my boy, he gets me. He's like, no, what's wrong? No, I totally understand. It's not a problem. Tell me where you're at. Like, let's talk about this. Just totally
he's totally
backs off.
fine, not moving forward. He just generally wants to be with her, and if she doesn't want to be with him in that way, he will
just
happily
wants to know where she's at, wait
just
for her,
hang
like
out.
He's fine with it. But her reasoning is, no, we have to go back and train. She still holds that hatred for Joel, and she can't get rid of it. She can't let it go. She can't see that what he wants is just life. He values life over all of this other garbage in the world, just, fellowship with people. Mm-hmm. And because she can't see that moment elicits that perfectly, so that when she starts having a change of heart and realizing that, this war they're fighting is empty and vapid, when she starts realizing that, the decisions she's making aren't, they're not going anywhere. And she starts to kind of realize again that, what she wants is actually just a quiet life with someone else, and that's the moment where she and Owen finally do the dirty. You know what I mean? To put it a little more crudely, but
it's pretty crude.
But you see what I mean?
Weird.
Like the use of that when she's finally coming around to that, and then because they do, and because she looks over at him, not even like, wishing that, oh, I wish I could go back. She doesn't do that. She's like, okay, I need to go and help those other people. I need to go help those, the people that I kind of left on their own to go finish doing whatever I was planning on doing. And she didn't even know why at first, but using those character moments, using other characters to reveal what is going on in someone's head without explicitly saying it. It's just good writing, man. And we're going to talk about it a little later, I promise, but the ending is something really special. And the character journeys and who they are and how they play off of each other is just, it's good writing. So that's why we gave it number 1 for sure. It's in a league of its own.
I would agree, and maybe even more so than you. I think I hold this game a little higher than you do.
Definitely.
But I couldn't have said it better. That's why I wanted you to talk about it specifically. Yeah, I think this is incredible. And before we move further, we're going to take a little break.
Yes, we need it, and so does your computer.
So does my computer. But we want to take this moment to remind you guys of our Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. Come follow us with a $2 donation on Patreon. That $2 tier will get you into our Discord. This month we are trying to play, though we've really been enjoying this past 2 weeks with no game on the docket. We've been trying to play Ikaruga. That is our playthrough for this month. We're not really going to talk about it much on the cast, but we'll talk about it in the Discord among anybody else who's playing it with us or just wants to share some of their favorite moments for that game. It's so hard, Zach.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not good at those games. I've only played one other one before, being Akai Katana. on Metal Jesus's recommendation. That is a goofball.
I love that guy.
He's a silly guy and has weird taste.
Yes, correct.
No, not weird. Just incorrect.
Just wrong.
Yeah. I mean, so like, he's going to recommend, like, Alpha Protocol to you and tells you all the reasons it's bad, but hey, it's a PS3 game, so I guess I'll recommend it. Like that's his reason for recommending is that it's on a console that he's currently talking about it.
Amazing.
So anyway, I've only played one other, Bullet Hell, so I figured I'd try one of the most prominent in that genre, and we want to share more games with you guys, build a community there. I mentioned how much I love photo mode, or have come to love photo mode this year with Ghost of Tsushima. So if you guys want to share some of your pictures from photo mode, or just talk about some of your favorite ways to use photo mode, maybe come over to our photo mode server, and our channel rather, and just hang out, just have a good time. And also, you know, you've made it pretty far. It's probably been like 2 hours now.
Almost.
You've made it pretty far. Maybe consider a like and a subscribe, or leaving a review on whatever podcast platform you're currently listening on, because that helps out a whole bunch. We are earnestly trying to build this community, and you know, if you stuck around with us, we'd love to have you. And that's about it.
That's about it. We're gonna take a quick break.
We are.
Thanks, y'all. Good evening. Welcome back to the Unpatched Gaming Podcast. We are still talking about Game of the Year, and we are going to jump right back into it with our favorite moments. This is a personal list.
We are, and one of my favorite moments tonight is drinking this delicious whiskey.
Yes.
Tell me about what you brought, man.
I brought it's Hibiki Harmony. It's their no age statement blended whiskey. It's from Suntory. This is pretty much one of the best whiskeys for what is a Japanese whiskey like. This is up there. This one really, because it's a blend too, it focuses a lot on that delicacy that people like in Japanese whiskeys. It's gonna be nice and simple. You're gonna get some honey,
Definitely some honey there.
Maybe a little bit of floral influence. It's just a nice whiskey. It does exactly what a blend should do as well.
And
this is
as I mentioned earlier, this is incredibly smooth. Actually, maybe it was just the perfect sip, but that first sip was almost dangerously smooth.
It's that's a good word for it. I'm a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan of this whiskey. I'm glad I could bring it out. I don't bring it out too much. I have my Japanese whiskey pretty much just sits there waiting for special occasions because it's so hard to find a lot of the time.
Bring some tomorrow.
Yeah, dude.
I'll drink it, man. So we're going to jump into our favorite moments from video games this year.
Yes.
I have not mentioned this one on the cast yet. It was in the running for soundtracks, but this is a moment from Signs of the Sojourner. It'll be a long time before this particular moment leaves my memory, and that's because of what I love about games. Or one of the things that I love about games, and that's when a game can effectively marry its mechanics, its moment-to-moment gameplay with the narrative. I've talked about Florence. We unfortunately didn't get to post it, but we talked about that moment in Edith Finch, and Brothers, Tale of Two Sons does this. The way that Signs of the Sojourner is able to use its card play mechanics to perfectly illustrate language barriers and emotional walls you're putting up in conversation, or just talking to someone that has different experiences than you. It does so effectively. And I didn't get this moment in my full playthrough, but earlier in the year when I played the demo, I did. And the game is structured into, I think, 5 or 6 trips you take cross country. And you're gathering a bunch of resources to bring back to your small town shop. And your best friend, your lifelong friend, is at the shop waiting, running the shop, and you're supposed to bring the inventory. But it's not about buying things, and like the gameplay isn't about buying things and managing inventory or economies. It's about the relationships you build with the vendors. So every time you enter into a conversation with someone, that's the gameplay, is the conversation. You're playing a card game, and it could be 2 rounds, could be 7 rounds, doesn't matter. But you're trying to match up symbols on your cards and not defeat your opponent, but successfully interact with your opponent. So I might play a card that has any combination of I think there are 6 different emotions. So it might begin and end with a, like a firm, authoritative stance. That's what the symbol is supposed to represent. Or it could be an emotional sort of take on the conversation. Or it might be analytical, or it might just be an asshole. There are a bunch of different styles of communicating, and you're supposed to match those up and allow the conversation to flow successfully. And you're not given a choice here. You have to take a card and give a card every time you end a conversation. And as you go through these, maybe it's like 10 days you're away from home. The longest you've been away from home, the longest you've been apart from your best friend. You're really having experiences that you couldn't have imagined as a kid. Out on your own, or with this caravan, but certainly away from anyone you know and care about. And you're gaining a lot of new experiences that your friend at home is not gaining. His deck of cards, it's like 10 cards, does evolve a little bit, but it's only with those emotions that are around your hometown. As you go into a big city for the first time, you might get something that's a little more frantic and scatterbrained, or something that's a little more analytic. And you want to have those in your deck so you can have those sort of conversations, hopefully have successful conversations with those people. But when you come back home, you're just sitting out on the sidewalk, you closed up for the day, you sold all your items, and you're just like having a drink, a cup of coffee or something with your friend. And I couldn't do it because I was exhausted, which is another mechanic in the game. Every couple of days you you're given an exhaustion card, which stays in your hand. There's no way to get rid of it, and does not match up with anything else. So it's an automatic double loss, because you'll lose the one that you just attached it to, and then your opponent can't say anything in conjunction with that. So it's an automatic 2. It's very difficult and a great mechanic. But my deck is filled with those because I pressed my luck a little too much. I tried to stay out, stay away from home for too long. Got too many of those. I allowed my deck to become a little too diverse, and I just couldn't have a conversation with him. But he was able to press through that a little bit. I kept failing, and you can see the sadness. You can hear the sadness. The soundtrack is really something. And finally, he was able to get that final say that allowed us to like sit down and chill out and just relax with each other for a minute. Have another intimate moment with each other. I was not able to because of what I allowed my character to be. And I've had very similar interactions with some of my old friends that, I probably owe some apologies to. What was I watching last night? Someone, I really forget what it was, but someone said, oh no, it was Kentucky Route Zero. One of the characters asks Conway, do you have any debts? And one of the option is, I owe some people some apologies. That's such a good line.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case for me too, because of conversations like that. And that really, really hit me hard. It's so effective. So number 3 for me is that final conversation from your first trip in Signs of the Sojourner.
That's really good. For me, my number 3 is the ending of Last of Us Part 2.
Okay.
And the reason that it hit me so hard is the emotional beats that it takes you through are incredibly fast by the end. Because what happens is the climax of the game happens and it's over, and you live through what is this honestly really dragged out ending that, like, wait, the game already ended. This is like a long time in the future. It feels like, why is this still a problem? Because of Ellie's inability to forgive and her journey through that. You get to kind of walk her through that journey, and it's honestly at first really jarring. Like, I'm done playing this game. I'm just done, which is exactly how you're supposed to feel. And as you get carried through that, you see it's one of those times where, like, the ending doesn't seem to fit, but it's actually the perfect way to end it.
It's really, really effective.
Yeah, it's. I can think of a couple other examples in literature and in film. A great example just right now is Toradora. Toradora, you get the huge emotional payoff you've been waiting for a long time, and then it keeps going. And it's making a far more important statement than any other show like it. And Last of Us 2 has that effect. I'm extremely grateful for the way they ended it. I think it's better than any clincher ending. It lets characters be very human and make decisions that are not logical and just things they should just be over already, but they're not, and they can't be. And the moments that deliver character growth and being able to see how other characters have grown and how those characters bounce off of each other and reveal more about each other and push each other and change each other. And then you get a Metal Gear Solid 4 final fight, and it's just so well presented. It will never, ever leave me. It's one of the most significant narrative moments I've ever experienced in games. The only ones that can top it that I can think of off the top of my head are Red Dead Redemption 2 and God of War. Like, I mean, it's that good. And both those games in the past 2 years, so it's really cool to see games progressing that way.
Great time to be a gamer, man.
It is. It's good stuff. So that's my number 3, the ending of Last of Us Part 2.
I am changing my number 2 right now because for some reason this was completely wiped from my memory until just now, and I'm ashamed that I didn't put it here. And that is also from The Last of Us 2, but the museum, the Natural Science Museum. And yep. Oh my God, when you're like a young teenager as Ellie, this is a flashback, and Joel takes her for her birthday, takes her to a natural science museum to see dinosaurs and to see some some like the Moonlander. Takes her to see the Moonlander or something like that. And when this flashback starts, you're walking through the forest, and she's like, come on, just tell me where you're taking me, please. I don't really like surprises. And he refuses. He is not going to tell her. And so she starts guessing, and her first guess is it a dinosaur? And he won't tell her. Is it whatever? And she just says complete BS. And you have no idea that it could even possibly be a dinosaur. And I was just overwhelmed when you see the freaking dinosaur. And because, we were kids, we were struck with wonder the first time we saw Jurassic Park. And as an adult, that's happened with me a few times. I will defend Interstellar. I love Interstellar so much. It's not his best movie. I won't make that claim, but it is one of my all-time favorite movies because it strikes me like that, just like Breath of the Wild did. As an adult, you don't get to experience things the way you did as a kid very often anymore. True. And so I know what it was like to have those sort of moments. She doesn't. And for him to give her that was just so special. But this was too much to handle, dude. Really, I had completely lost it at this point. When they get into the spaceship, I can't do it right now. You know the scene. You know it. He hands her that recording of the countdown for the launch. It's too good.
It is.
I'm just going to stop talking about it, though. Oh, my God.
Good. My number 2. The first few hours of Half-Life Alyx.
Wow.
And
interesting.
And I knew this was going to surprise you. But there is nothing like the feeling of booting up. And I love VR games. I think they're fun. The Job Simulator is the first VR game I ever played, and it's just so fun to toss stuff around and goof off and throw the milk onto the frying pan and do things in VR that are just silly. In Half-Life Alyx, you start on a balcony and immediately you pick something up and toss it, and the physics are so... I can't describe it. I can't describe what it's like, but I spent 30 minutes on that balcony throwing glass at pigeons and, like, I mean, just, like, trying to juggle. And I'm telling you, I called my wife into the room. I said, Amanda. She goes, what are you doing? What's wrong? I'm like, go look at this. Oh, my God. She's like, you're just throwing some stuff off a building. Like, what is so cool? I'm like, put this on right now. And then you go in, you get to draw like little things onto the window with the marker. As you keep progressing, you know, you get the guns and they just feel really fun. It is so unique, and everything people are saying about it is absolutely true. It is stunning how amazing it is just to exist in that world. I remember the first time I saw one of the zombies and the dead body, this like guts hanging out and stuff, and I just started like trying to pick it up and like jiggle it and move it, and I mean and like it was genuinely like ugh, and I just like kind of start moving my hand around in there. I'm telling you, man, the amount of times I called my wife into the room probably made her want to kill me, but it was so much fun.
Second time I'll mention this episode, definitely go watch it, is Jacob Geller's video on Half-Life Alyx. I think it's called The Intimacy of Everyday Items or some Everyday Objects. It's very good, and it opens with that and then talks about the liquid shaders. And one of his favorite moments from that game is when you've got bottles everywhere that you've been throwing and using to distract enemies up until this point, but now there are bottles everywhere in this, what is it, like a vodka distillery or something?
I don't know.
But there's bottles everywhere, and now they are your biggest enemy because there is a big baddie walking around, but if you slightly nudge one, it's going to fall. And he mentions he was reaching for a grenade and didn't see that there was a bottle on this like this ledge right here, and he picked up his grenade and was going to throw it, and this bottle was dropping, and just reaching down to grab it like some suspenseful moment in a movie, knelt down and reached down and grabbed it just before it hit the floor, was one of his most satisfying moments in gaming ever, which sounds incredible.
I didn't even mention the gloves you get that let you just flick items to yourself. You straight up just like aim at the item and flick, and it flies towards you and you can catch it or just let it keep going. The second I got that, wasted so much time.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably a lot of fun. Can you, if someone is chasing you, just like throw things behind you?
Yeah, you can like flick an explosive barrel behind you or something, and it just flies right back. Yeah,
that's awesome. That is
so
the
correct word for it.
It really does seem incredible.
Yeah, it's really special.
I'm glad VR finally has some huge marquee title. It's been a lot of fun up until this point, and Alyx sounds like a lot of fun, but Alyx seems like it's really on another level than most of the things VR has to offer right now. And I'd like to play it someday. You guys should log into my Steam account and play Super Hot VR. That seems like it would be an awesome VR game. Yeah. And also meta. The game is very largely about VR already. So, and it's a separate game. Super Hot VR is a separate game, so it just seems like it would be very interesting to tell another story about virtual reality and virtual reality. And they already try to do some meta things, like to quit the game you have to launch exit.exe, which it's just like a fun one of those little things,
So I think we have the same number one.
Number one for moments. Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. So killing Daddy for the first time is what I wrote down.
Yes.
Killing Hades. Defeating Hades for the first time. You talked about it a lot already.
Yeah.
But really, it was such a relief and such a massive wave of satisfaction. And I'm sure my neighbors were concerned. I threw, like in one fluid motion, threw my controller down, jumped up out of my chair, and it like pushed up against the table behind me, pointed at the screen yelling expletives all at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as I saw him go down for that second time, it was so satisfying, man.
Yeah, and I mean, and the game uses death so well. You die, but you still progress something with your death. In fact, you progress some of the most interesting pieces of the game by your death. You don't really realize until you've beat him the first time how much that's still taken a toll on you and how much you just want to get that win in, man. And the first time he comes back, like when he just revives with full health again, and has a totally new moveset, is so defeating and perfectly placed, because the time when you actually beat him, because when I beat him the first time, I didn't have that, like when I beat his first form for the first time, I didn't have that just intense emotional reaction like I did when I really beat him, and you knew it, and it worked so well.
I wonder if through playtesting, they realized they were not able to elicit the emotion with the first tier.
I love also fighting him with the Pact of Punishment turned on, where he gets a third form too.
Oh my god!
It is I've only beaten him twice with it. Once with the spear and once with the bow. But
I don't want to look it up. But there's so many little details here, and I don't want to ruin it for myself or even for you. I don't think I'll ever do it, but maybe try launching a new save and beating it in one run, and see if there's new dialogue or something like that.
That'd be crazy. I'm sure there's dialogue for if you reach him without any boons. Just really interesting stuff like that.
Yeah, or when you finally beat Megara for the first time, she mentions that the or rather after you fight her a couple times, she mentions that the mirror is giving you power, and that's not totally fair. And after she says that, she mentions the mirror. If you take all of the upgrades off and go back to her, he'll mention, hey, you're right, I want to face you on even footing, and then they fight, and then there's more dialogue after you go talk to her.
And there's something different between beating Hades and beating a really difficult Dark Souls boss or something like that, because the difference between the two is with Hades, you have built and know this character and what he represents to your progress and what you've been trying to accomplish, and all those emotions, those angsty Prince of the Undead teenage emotions are all there. And beating him, there's a sadness in his voice, not about being beaten, but like realizing you're gonna go see Persephone, and he says like, tell her Cerberus is okay. And then
that's so good.
Yeah, and then
my goodness,
and then like
he doesn't get it.
He doesn't.
He's like, what? You want me to tell her that? And I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
Yes, and his final words, like, because Zag still doesn't get it. He just says, as he like the same animation that happens to you when you die, he just says, there is no escape, just like what happens every time you die.
So I do wonder how much of his character is based on, because he says he's tried. He knows there's no escape. I wonder how many times he's made that climb.
It's so Greek, man, to like, even just to have a couple minutes with your mom, you have to just trudge through literal hell to get to her for just a couple minutes. It's incredible. What an incredible boss. The emotional payoff, the development to get there. It's a really special moment in gaming that I don't think I'll ever be able to forget. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's definitely going to go down as one of the greats, I think, especially with a lot of the controversies happening this year about crunch and just the way developers are treated, and also the state of the games that you're getting on launch. This, not only the state but the quality. We talked about as much as I've grown to appreciate Tsushima, that moment-to-moment gameplay, it doesn't really do it for me. The first act is pretty weak.
Sure.
Just, this is, first of all, $25. Or 20, right? It's $20.
Yeah, I think it's 25 actually, but it's always 20 on sale.
Point is, it's cheap. You can get anywhere from 10 to 80 hours out of this game, and it's stellar across the board.
Yeah, and replayable
really
too.
Yeah,
it's very fun. And I mean, yeah, this is like something I'd put on Hollow Knight levels of like what you're getting for your dollar. It's disgusting almost. Like, how did you even do this? kind of things. So.
And decide that $25 was worth your time.
Oh my gosh. Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, Hollow Knight is really something. $15 for Hollow Knight is insane.
It's just so much content and quality.
Don't
content.
even wait for a sale. Just go get it for $15 and have yourself a great time.
One of the best games ever made.
Yeah, I think it is my favorite game.
It's up there.
I'd have to replay it no, currently it's my favorite game. It might not be if I replay it, but Hollow Knight is number 1 for me.
It's 2 or 3 for me, for sure. It's right up there, man.
Well, I haven't played Metal Gear Solid 5 yet.
I don't know if it'll be that high for you, but like that's just my favorite game objectively for me. Like I know it's my favorite game, but Hollow Knight is way up there, man. It is so good. But this is not about Hollow Knight.
We can make it about Hollow Knight. If you ever want to just have a Hollow Knight episode, that's fine.
I'm
fine
totally
by me.
okay with that. I love that game.
So what are we doing right now? Oh, we just talked about Killin' Daddy. So we talked about this on the break, this segment. We were going to do personal game of the year, and then, so for each of us, and then unpatched game of the year. But it's a lot of crossover, different order for each, for, both of our personal and for the official game of the year stamp.
Yeah.
But that's fine. We'll tell you what our favorite is, or in what order.
As we talk about it.
Zach, go ahead and take it away with game of the year, man.
Yep. So number 3, unpatched game of the year. The number 3 spot goes to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I believe is your third choice for game of the year.
Yes, and
as well.
I actually listen. I got a lot of problems with Final Fantasy VII Remake. A lot of issues that really, like, some of it I think is almost to the point of being stupid. Like, I don't understand. But some of this game is just so good.
It's too good, man. And for me,
I tried to not put it on my top 3, and I couldn't.
Yeah, it's hard, man. And I agree with you. It's my number 2 choice for my personal game of the year. But I understand, and I get the problems. I see them. And there are some that I think are unforgivable. And yet, this game, we talked about the combat already. What I love about that combat, the feeling of intensity, that epic boss battle, even the individual fights themselves have such a cinematic feel to them without ever, well, I don't say without ever, mostly never taking control from the player. You feel as though you're in charge of these incredibly cinematic moments, and they sell it so perfectly, and I love it. And they're ballsy, man. They're ballsy. They basically took the time to really make a mostly faithful remake in a lot of ways, and then sprinkle in some stuff that didn't really line up, add some extra filler stuff, and then at the end just go, yeah, we're going to do our own thing now. Like, and I understand why fans are mad, but I am much more interested in something new than just bringing a game that I already am more than happy to go back and just play as is again.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what they do. I hope they really double down on it, honestly. Just really do something unique and crazy.
Well, at this point, they don't really have a choice. Like,
I'm hoping.
It has changed,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's the original plot line of the game has been effectively erased from this timeline of Final Fantasy.
Now, we're going to get into some spoilers here, but I do wonder what they're going to do. Like, they seem to have erased the option for any sensible time travel sort of stuff or alternate universe sort of stuff, unless they literally, like, open a void into a portal into another universe and Zack is able to walk through it. I don't know how that's gonna, I mean, it's Final Fantasy. It's probably not gonna even try to be logical.
No, it's not gonna try to make sense. Have you even, like, you can go back all the way to their oldest games, anything Square has ever done, and the immediate question after, like, the big reveal moment is, wait, what? Like, every single time you're like, how did this, I'm sorry, can we go back? Oh God. Like, that's the response every time. And I personally love it. I can't get enough of it. It cracks me up.
It's so silly though.
And I know.
How are they going to explain? Cause you're obviously going to, like, Zack is going to join your party. That's going to be a thing. But I also wonder how different he is going to be from Cloud, because a lot of this gameplay does come from a little bit of Crisis Core, and Cloud's Buster Sword is his sword.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if he's going to be much different. And
technically, I mean, if we're going to go real spoilers in Final Fantasy VII, the only reason he fights like that is because his cells essentially have learned from Zach, and that's the only reason he can even fight like that.
Dude,
at
you
all.
gotta play Crisis Core. I don't even like Final Fantasy VII that much, or rather, I didn't grow up with it, and I'm not nostalgic for it. But I've played that game twice. The game's so good.
You're talking about Crisis Core, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's gonna answer. Well, it is going to give an explanation for a lot of your questions.
Yeah, I love Final Fantasy VII. I'll say that right now. I'm actually currently going through all the Final Fantasy games. Well,
Up
most
to
of them.
9, right?
Well, I'm kind of jumping around. So the first Final Fantasy game I ever played to completion was 15, which is a weird starting point. Would not recommend it. Maybe the game, but not starting there. Final Fantasy 15, and then I went back and I played 4, and then I played 7. No, I went back, played 7, then 4, and then Final Fantasy 1, and now I'm playing 5.
You didn't play 2?
No, not happening.
I thought you did. I thought you started it.
I will straight up I will play Final Fantasy 13 before I play 2.
Oof.
Yeah, I
I
unfortunately
think Final Fantasy 13 is one of the worst games ever made. Just full disclosure here.
I think what I remember of it I liked, but I need to readdress it now that I'm an adult. But 2 just is too janky. I'll probably, if I ever play it, it'll just be because I've played the rest and will want to have a completionist kind of thing about it. But anyway, that being said, I really like the original Final Fantasy quite a bit. So I'm excited to see what they do with this one. I think it's a good game. If you're asking me right now what my favorite Final Fantasy is, it's 4. 4 is probably my favorite Final Fantasy right now.
Very good. I played 4 a couple times as well. I've never played the original or the one on PSP. I've only played the DS version, which I don't know how different it is, but it certainly is presented differently. Oh, it's harder.
It's a lot harder. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's quite a bit harder.
You know what was difficult is the mini games. There's some mini games you play after you go like underground. I forget what that place is, but the big like dwarf caverns that are underground. There's some mini games there that I just couldn't. Like I like arcade games. I like furthering my score or bettering my score. And I remember, I don't know how the DS screen withstood just my 14-year-old just pounding into it enraged. I was very angry at that game.
Heard that.
Anyhow.
Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's number 3.
Number 3. One clarification real quick. I'm being a little hyperbolic about 13. I actually have incredibly fond memories about the combat and character progression in Final Fantasy 13. Like 7 Remake, the menu it takes you into for character progression, or in 7's case, weapon progression, is weird and silly, but I very much enjoyed all of the character progression, and I thought the combat, I remember it being really, really good and incredibly engaging. I played it on launch, though. I don't know how well that will hold up.
Yeah, I'd have to readdress it.
Yeah, for sure. So, number 2 here. You're really going to take this one away? You talk real good, Zach.
You talk real good.
So, you just take it away with this one, man.
Yep, so our number 2 choice is The Last of Us Part 2. We obviously have no affiliation, no requirements to like this game. We don't get any money at all, actually. We are actually in the hole quite a bit on this. So
that is correct.
So I'm going to tell you right now, when we say we like Last of Us 2, we're not just lying, we're not just pandering. We like this game a lot.
And we begrudgingly played it because we thought it would our Game of the Year discussion would be incomplete without it. We didn't want to play it.
Yeah, this is something that is incredibly surprising to me. I mean, it's on my surprises list for sure. This is your number 1 choice for the year.
It is my number 1, yeah.
Number 1 choice for the year for me.
It was incredibly effective.
Yep, it's my number 3. It's an incredibly good game. The number 1 thing for me out of it was presentation. I think that there is no game presented as well as this game that I can think of. Like you said, Red Dead 2 maybe comes close for me, but I still think this game brings it to a whole new level, which is a little easier in its defense, because it's not open world, it's not as big, it can be more focused, so that is a part that goes into it. But
which actually, now that you mention that, it really lends a lot to, or says a lot about Rockstar, yeah, do excuse me, Rockstar's prowess,
Yeah,
really, that an open world game can be on the same tier
it's
as
crazy,
you talk
man.
about God of War. I do think that's
Sure.
on a lower tier. This is like those two games are the highest of the highest, the
Yeah,
current pinnacle of how video games can be presented, and the fact that they did it in an open world is incredible.
yeah. But for Last of Us 2, again, it goes down to every little thing you can do. The way a rope falls over something you're throwing it over. The way that the way that breaking glass sounds and feels. That response that you get as a player. Again, I think you said it on our cast. It's akin to the God of War axe, calling it back. That it's the player feedback to that, the feedback to the player in that moment through the sound and presentation. It's just amazing. It's so good. The narrative, obviously, we are both nuts for the narrative. I do think, and I will defend to my grave, that this is a good narrative. It is a very well written game.
Yeah, I honestly like after listening to some of the usual suspects, really was like questioning: am I just a freaking idiot? I don't see what you guys are seeing. I think this is incredible.
There are those who called the game nihilistic, which, if you interpret the ending that way, I don't see how you can get to that conclusion at all. It's sad, sure, but there's an incredible amount of just these little seeds of moving on. The idea of moving on, and that is honestly, I would say, the fundamental theme of the game. Is not because someone said the game's about revenge. No, the plot's about revenge. The game is about moving on.
The story's about moving on.
Yeah, and it's just so good. And I love that about it. And then I would say the level design is another point in its favor. This is some incredible use of levels to let you kind of really just have a little bit of. It's not a playground. It's pretty restrictive on purpose because of the way the game is. But it's not restrictive in not letting you, move around, experiment, use crevices in the wall or verticality to take that to your advantage. Every little thing counts, because it can be pretty unforgiving, especially on higher difficulties. So being able to take advantage of the level design offered to you and how it communicates those aspects of the level to you is incredibly elegant. This game really deserves the recognition it's getting. I understand why people pick it as Game of the Year. I can definitely get behind that. Do you have anything else you want to say about it? I mean,
I don't.
We've said a lot about it, man.
We have, yeah. We definitely have.
However, it is not our Game of the Year.
No. And the reason for this is because we've got a couple other people behind the scenes, or maybe they're not so much currently, but helped us get to this point. And the fact that I would have made a much stronger argument for Last of Us if it weren't for all of us lining up for Hades.
Yes, and Hades is it's the Game of the Year for us. It was my kid brother's favorite Game of the Year. It was my favorite Game of the Year for sure. Your second favorite, I believe.
Yeah.
It really is a special experience. That I think the main things it delivers are a new way of progression, story progression, using every decision that you make, even the ones you don't make, even your death, the way that you fight a certain character, the weapon you choose, when you fail a run at a specific spot, certain characters will engage in different dialogue options. You'll have the opportunity to progress a new character in a new way. I think that's number one of something incredible that it did. Number two, though, and maybe even just tied for number one for me, is the pacing of how they pace out that content. Nothing happens too fast, but you never feel like you're missing out. Just all of a sudden a brand Thanatos will show up and you're like, who is this guy? Why is he? And then you have this little, friendly wager on who can kill the most people in the room. They just drop that like after you've gone through a couple runs, like a good number of runs already. It just drops out of nowhere. And now it's a recurring thing that happens on your runs. There's always something new. Like you said, the bosses will change. Lerny will get a new type of head as its main head, and you're gonna have to deal with that now. You'll fight a different Fury sister, for the first one, and it'll just drop that, a little bit at a time and meter that out to you. The way that you can progress each character's relationship with Zag takes a lot of time, and you kind of have to really balance that out. And honestly, well after I got credits, I was still unlocking new aspects of the game, like new mechanics. New mechanics were dropping in my lap after I had already gotten credits in this game. Wow. This is, and it's not just like a little extra bonus thing. Like, it is totally brand new mechanics you get to now just mess with. New weapon aspects. I honestly didn't get my last weapon aspect until I think like 60 hours into the game. It's just so rich in what is available to the player, and you're always eager to get back in and figure out what's next there. Not only for the characters, but just for the gameplay itself. Mm-hmm. I know we shared our builds back and forth all the time. I have, to this day, sitting on a little shrine in my file explorer on my computer, is the build that I used to beat 32 heat.
32, that's nuts.
I only did it once. I barely made it. I refused to do the shield build that everybody says breaks the game. I refused. So I did it with the Hades aspect spear.
What shield?
The Chaos shield, all the way upgraded with Zeus. And all you do is just charge, dash, and throw your shield. That's pretty much the only way people...
Probably good stuff, man.
It's pretty much the only way people have found to beat the game with every heat turned on is using that. So I refused. I wanted to do it my way, and I did.
Awesome.
But
is 32 the max?
No. It's like way higher than that. 32 is the max that it takes to unlock Skelly's last prize.
Oh.
Yeah.
So does it ever tell you who those are from? Are they from Skelly?
It's unclear because he's Skelly. Again, one other thing I want to mention that I think is incredibly... what makes this game stand out and really special is you have systems that encourage variety, right? So, a weapon will activate and have a glow around it. You get more darkness rewards from it. Just trying to get you to diversify a little bit. Beating a run with one weapon, especially until you beat the game, you can't get the rewards from that weapon anymore. You'll just get, some darkness instead, which is a currency. And so you want to try to use it with the other weapons so you can keep getting those rewards, be able to spend the more valuable rewards, right? I think that's incredible. You also have the mirror. I love this form of character progression, because it's not just, look, I'm going to upgrade this stat. I'm going to get more health. I'm going to get more lives. Very common things for roguelites, right? Very common. So instead of that, it's, okay, well, here is, your first hit does 75% more damage when it's fully maxed out. Or you can switch it. You have two options. You only have one active at a time, and you get 50% extra backstab damage. You now, instead of just having these things that you can upgrade and you're just stronger now, you have to make intelligent decisions based on the kind of build, the kind of weapon you're going for, on which of the two offered to you that you want to use. And, just a simple touch like that, it makes it so much more interesting than just an objective, blatant, here's a power-up.
Yeah, it's really great. I've messed with that. I've respected that whole mirror like several times. Now, I'm not at the point in the game where everything is just maxed out and I can just flip the switch. I have to go and
I didn't get there either.
Oh, really?
Dude, yeah, the last couple.
Yeah,
it's really expensive.
They're so expensive, but each one focuses on a particular aspect of the game. So it might be health, or it might be lives, it might be your dash, or it might be your casts, or what happens when you enter a room. Everything is based on a particular mechanic, but two very different takes on that mechanic. So a prime example is your cast. You have one spell you can cast, right? Is it one or two? Do you start with?
I don't know, to be honest. I think it's one.
We've been living with the upgrade for so long.
Yeah.
So let's say you start with one. The upgrade might be 2, and then you can get 3. And then once you finally unlock the ability to have that whole other build, you can just flip those switches. Instead, now the upgrade could be if you choose to go with that version of the cast upgrade, while it's stuck in somebody, or no, it charges. That's the other one.
Yeah.
It charges instead of you having the 3.
3, yeah, and so you have to collect them if you have the 3, but now instead you can have 1 only, but it'll recharge on its own and immediately appear back in for you to use.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I've messed with the Hera aspect bow using both of those. Dionysus's fog.
The only negative part about this game that I can think of, which is really more of just a personal thing, it makes complete sense and is a great moment.
And you can't romance Nyx.
Oh yeah, no, that's a huge knockoff of this game, and really, actually, I don't know why we're making a Game of the Year. At this point, it does not deserve Game of the Year. No, is one of the my least favorite weapon is the gun. I just don't like it.
Oh, I love it,
but
it has grown on me immensely.
It might if I do it again, but you mentioned the mechanics that encourage diversity. I wanted those resources, those elite resources, so I decided to make a run with the game. And not only that, when you complete a run with each of them, you get the fate rewards.
Yes.
So I was trying to grind some of those as well. And so I finally got around to playing the gun. It is far and away, like nothing even comes close to that being, or to how good that build was. It was my absolute best build. I anticipated killing Hades in about 45 seconds. I don't mean his first form, I mean both forms. It was nuts, but that was the run where he says, just go.
Oh, no.
I didn't get to fight him.
What a beautiful moment, though.
Yeah.
What a beautiful moment.
It's a great game.
Yeah,
and
that's
definitely, as much as I love Last of Us 2, I didn't even argue for it to be Game of the Year because everybody else also just absolutely
it's incredible.
Loved it.
But what I love about this podcast is that we're all about sharing games together, and it's so much more than just 2020
and drinks, sharing drinks. So let's get a little more of this.
Yeah, you do it, man. I'm good.
Oh yeah, you're about to go home, huh?
I am about to go home.
Heard that.
But that's almost done. If you want to just keep the rest of it here,
I am not even going to question.
Heard that. But I just kind of want to move into our final segment. And we very intentionally made this our last segment because we are about sharing games, and we want to talk about the games that we shared. What are the favorite games we played that we shared together? And obviously, some of this list will include stuff we didn't play together because it's the beginning of the year. We weren't doing this yet, but moving forward, a lot more is going to line up. We're going to be sharing these games with each other. So the only rule is no games that we had played already will show up on here. So like if we had, so for example, if Tyler shared a game with me that he had already played and I fall in love with it, he won't put it on his list, but it'll be on mine.
Could be.
So it will be.
Well, a good example that we played for our alpha build of the podcast was Oddworld. I love that game, and I'm so happy I finally got to share it for you. Definitely didn't make it on my list because I can't. Probably not yours though, right?
No, it did not make mine.
Yeah.
It did not make mine.
I am glad I got to replay it this year though. That was great. I had never 100%ed it. Finally got to do that. I think that was the 4th time I finished that game.
Do you have yours ordered 1 to 3?
I do.
Okay, then I do as well. And I'll go ahead and get started. My number 3 wasn't a game we shared together, but it was Final Fantasy 1.
Which is crazy.
And I get why people don't play it. So just as to clarify, I played the Origins version, which is the PlayStation 1 version. But I played it on my PS Vita. And it is incredibly difficult. Not because it's like just difficult as it is. It's not as tactically difficult, but it has it's extremely punishing. Like you are dropped in, and like I went out to go start the game, and I got into a battle, and I realized I had no weapons and no armor. Like you don't start with weapons and armor. You start with nothing. You have 400 gold. Need to go buy some stuff. And but you can customize. You can choose which class to start with, which is awesome. And I realized that the world is incredibly dangerous. Even at the end of the game, I didn't feel comfortable just traipsing around without a bunch of equipment and 99 potions maxed out. Just because I
don't remember it. I beat it when I was much younger. I got the double pack on Game Boy. The
Dawn of Souls.
Yeah, that sounds right. It had 1 and 2 on it.
Yep. But I will say that I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but I love that game. I have an immense respect for it. It is, the danger of going out unprepared is never shows up in any of the later games. And as you progress, the story is incredibly simple until time travel gets thrown in, because Final Fantasy, even from game one, it's so awesome. I love it. But just even throw time travel in a game like that. But, just learning the combat, you have a party, and it's the same party. There's no switching out jobs. There's none of that stuff. It's just, this is your party. And
can you switch? I forget. Can you switch the characters that are in the party?
What do you mean switch? No.
Well, like, there's 4 characters.
Yeah, you
right?
just have 4. Done. That's it. And
the Warriors of Light.
Yeah, the Warriors of Light. And there is something so engaging about just having to go a little further out and a little further out, and the catharsis of getting the airship finally, just be able to fly over all that stuff. Finding the fiends and just going through the dungeons, and every dungeon is terrifying because you will start all the way over from the beginning if you die. And just making sure you're prepared, being willing to turn around and leave if you know you're not going to be able to make it. There's just this raw classic D&D feel to it that isn't in the other games. And I'm not saying they're less for it, but this one is certainly greater for it. And, getting just, you have to just go out and kill some enemies and get some gold so you can even afford. Weapons are so expensive, and so that means they're so valuable. And the order you buy them, and you're not going to just buy them all. You're not going to buy all the spells. You have to be smart about it. And it's unique, and I really fell in love with it.
You've been playing Final Fantasy for a while now, and at the end of probably next year, you will have run through Final Fantasy.
I doubt
in
it.
its entirety. Well, at least all the numbered games.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. That's a lot of games.
Well, you've been talking about them for a long while, and we've got Final Fantasy 3 and 4 on the shelf over there, and I didn't realize how fondly I remember Final Fantasy 3. While 4 is currently my favorite Final Fantasy, 3 has a particular moment. You mentioned the airship right now. The first, was it half or 2/3 of the game? Have you played 3?
Not yet. No.
Oh, okay.
I have it on the shelf.
I'll
Good. Okay.
I'll leave
I'm glad.
that one alone then.
Yeah, that's my next one on my list is 3, actually.
Okay. So my number 3 was a very contentious spot. 1 and 2, I went back and forth on a little bit, but they were there. 1 and 2 were settled. The contender here was the first game I played this year. So I made a list of for myself, 15 games that I was sort of ashamed that I hadn't played. And the first one I played this year was Planescape Torment. It was there. So close, but I cannot get over Gone Home.
That's awesome.
I really, it's hard to explain. Really just the way it displays the 90s, what it's like to be a 90s teen. I wasn't a teenager in the 90s. I was born in 93. So I was a 90s kid, and a lot of that, the 90s wasn't over till 2004 anyway. But that's a definitive statement, okay?
No, I know.
The 2000s had not come into... That's true of any decade. They don't come into themselves for a little while. It takes a minute. Anyway.
This has been True Facts with Tyler.
This is True Facts with Tyler. So anyway, the way it just displays the 90s, it's really like a nostalgic callback to a very different era. And the house is really an engrossing character in itself, but also the narrative. If you go back and watch our walking sim episode, which honestly I'm so happy we did.
It's good.
That was great. Going through that whole genre.
Yeah, episode 2. Go check it out.
Definitely. Please revisit that one. So, walking through the house and the story. So, as I mentioned there, I can't relate with Sam in that she is a lesbian that has been she's misunderstood by her parents, and a lot of people might be sort of too quick to judge those people as terrible bigots, but I was reading I was reading an article recently about that game. I don't know when it came out, actually, the article, but I was reading it. It was from, I believe, a trans person, and they've gone through very similar things, but they were so kind with that misunderstanding and trying to explain how really the whole world, you yourself, misunderstood because of society. I get that, but you misunderstood yourself, and of course everyone around you was also hesitant to accept. That's difficult, and the game touches on those topics, and it does so very effectively. It's presented incredibly well, but also it presents a Christian home in the 90s, which is definitely something we grew up in. So I might not be a lesbian growing up in the 90s, struggling with Christian parents, but I was a kid growing up in the 90s, struggling with Christian parents that just didn't have logic applied to a lot of the things that maybe they disliked, or rather had, maybe they had a bunch of inconsistencies in their logic. I get all of that, and I grew up in that home, that sort of home, and I just can't get over it. Every aspect of that game comes up at least once a week since we've played it.
Sure.
I was gonna put Planescape Torment here, but I can't get over Gone Home, man.
I'm glad.
It's so good.
Um,
Let's take a break. What is your number 2?
So my number 2 is actually Darkwood.
That's my number 1. I'm going to let you take this one away.
Okay.
I think this game is incredible.
There is legendary, honestly, what they've accomplished here. This is something that I haven't seen done before, where it's a fairly long game, actually, for what it is.
Yeah.
So it's a top-down survival horror, like real emphasis on like a survival game, survival horror. And I didn't think I would love it as much. Like, I was interested in it, but I fell in love with this game. The way that it presents information to you, how you can hear everything around you, but only see in the cone of vision in front of you. The way that the day and night system gets you into this routine where you honestly just scare yourself. But then the real draw of the game is how it leads you into this place where you have become comfortable with the systems, and honestly, at some point you become good at them. And you start to feel almost like you're in the place you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And by the time the game is over, you just kind of want to go back, which is exactly the feeling it's meant to elicit. It's the grip of the woods.
Your interpretation of the ending, which you can see in our part 2 podcast, I think is pretty spot on. Not what I got from the ending, but in retrospect, I think it is correct. That seems to be what they're going for. And yeah, you become a force of nature.
Yeah.
And there's this really, I think, masterfully balanced difficulty curve of, teaching you the systems. It's pretty hard at first. It becomes a little easier. New things are introduced. It's harder. And, as you'd expect difficulty to be balanced, but then by the end, you really are this force that nothing can really touch.
Yeah.
And it's not the way it's presented. I think in a lot of games, what I just said would be a negative, because it might sound like it sort of drops that proper balancing by the end. But because it's also a very narrative driven game, what it's doing there at the end, both with the way it's presenting mechanics to you and the way you are able to manipulate those mechanics and what's happening in the narrative, I think it's incredible.
And the narrative too, the characters that you meet along the way, and just the way that each little tiny story progresses is dark and intoxicating, and just you can't look away kind of stuff. It's the combination of, you know, Eastern European folklore with kind of modern dark gritty realism. And
I mean, we talked about Eat the Mushroom Granny.
like just as
A text option, like an option for interacting with this character.
as if, you know, it's sitting there right next to, you know, like, speak with Mushroom Granny, trade with Mushroom Granny, eat Mushroom Granny. And it's just normal. And
but I was so... What?
like, where are you getting
Does that
this?
say?
Yeah, like, where are you getting this? And it's honestly just how it's presented is nothing short of masterful. What Acid Wizard accomplished with that game was undeniably just unique. To be able to take you on an emotional journey unlike any other game I've experienced, while being just ridiculously fun and actually scary. Mm-hmm. And act like when you're alone at night and you hear stuff outside, or something just all of a sudden shows up in your room, or maybe nothing shows up in your room. You know, the amount of time you spend, you know, constructing your defenses, and you know, the way it teaches you to get into a routine to where you are actually getting to where you're in control. And when you're in control, it shoves you into chapter 2, and you are...
Which is probably the most difficult part. Because by the time you get to chapter 3, I mean, chapter 3 is difficult. And
2, right?
Oh, I mean the areas.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I meant like chapter 2, like
yes,
when you hit,
which is the third area,
the swamp, 4th, right?
Sure.
Yeah, when you hit the swamp, you are in control in a lot of ways, and that's when it starts to really draw that you are part of the woods. Mm-hmm. And it does it way more elegantly than any game that does has a similar idea. It actually does it through gameplay, and I love it. I'm in love with that game.
Yeah,
it's
really incredible.
The only reason it is not number 1 is because I played a top 10 favorite game of all time for myself this year.
Yeah.
So only reason it's not there.
It is my number 1 because I had already played that game. Which,
yes.
Honestly, I do wonder if I played it today. Yeah, the way I talk about games today, it probably would be. But I'm happy I played it when I was younger.
Sure.
And just in that time of my life, because I probably wouldn't feel as strong about what is your number 1 if I played it today. But my number 2 is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice,
which I did not play.
No, this was something I played when we were still testing sort of what the podcast was going to be, and it wasn't just Zach and I. We actually had a panel of 4 here, occasionally 5. It was a bigger production, and not as focused. I think we were all playing something separate, talking about news and things. But anyway, I played a lot of games during that time, and Hellblade was one of them. Now, I played Hellblade, not Hellboy.
That'd be a great game. Come on, people.
I mean, there is a Hellboy game.
Yeah, but I mean,
something good.
I won't go that far. I haven't played the game, but
sure,
something ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I played Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Now, I think this game is absolutely stunning in every regard. The presentation, you know, she won. I forget her name, but she did win Best Performance at the BAFTAs. Was it 2 years ago now? For very good reason. The sound design, the combat in that game is incredible. Not complicated, but it feels so damn good. You know, I liken it to the axe, to the God of War axe. Every part of combat feels like retrieving the axe does. It doesn't do very much in the combat. It is admittedly pretty simplistic, but it feels incredible. And it's short, it's sweet, it doesn't overstay its welcome. If it was any longer, I think it would start to detract from the game a lot. It's telling a really gripping and educated story. The team here really took the time to educate themselves. There's a documentary in the game, in the menu. You can watch the documentary on the research they did about psychosis. and just mental illness in general. And the game is dealing with psychosis. And we had dealt with this a little bit recently in the past 2 years, I believe. Or is it 1 year?
2 years.
2 years. So it was still pretty raw, and there were actually several moments where I had to put that game down. I had to stop playing because it's not a gentle game by any means, and the story that's being told is real in the sense that people deal with that. I'm not one that subscribes to the belief that if someone is seeing it in their head, it is not real. You and I are not experiencing it, but it is an experience that is real. And that is true of Senwa here. And, I'll mention the sound design again. That's one of the most important factors of this game. And one of the things that I love about video games, not just the music, but also the sound design, that's a huge deal for me. If you haven't played this game yet, and you are considering, do not consider this game unless you have a good pair of headphones or loud speakers that are very, so like, monitor speakers close to your screen. But really, headphones are the way to go, because I'm not talking about trees rustling, metal clinking. The character has psychosis, and there are like 6 voices talking to her all the time. And we just talked about presentation. I would put this on the same tier as those other 2 games we've talked about. I think, it's 3 years old at this point, made by a smaller team, but I still put it up there. Not quite as good as those, but until I played Last of Us this year, was a very close second for me to Red Dead Redemption.
I'm honestly really excited to see it.
I'm excited for the second one, but part of that presentation comes in the sound design, in that all of those voices are always talking to her and are the UI. There's no UI in this game, no option to turn anything on. It's just the screen. So everything being communicated to you is through audio. A lot of what's being communicated to you is through audio, and all of it is conflicting. You have different personalities all telling you what to do during combat, how you should interact with the situation, but none of it's consistent, and it's incredible. You've got a bunch of people telling you what to do, and this is sort of a looser interpretation than some of the other games I've talked about, like Edith Finch or Florence, but you as the player are also one of those voices. You are never heard audibly because you as the player are the voice, but that seems pretty... That's a awesome decision to implement her psychosis like that. Aside from the presentation, though, just it hit me at the right time. Sure. It was particularly affecting, I think, and Hellblade is my my number 1, actually. We're lined up with Darkwood. Darkwood's number 2. Hellblade is special.
That was very dynamic.
That's right.
No, that's good stuff.
Keeping myself on my feet.
My number 1, part of the Lost episode, is Shadow of the Colossus.
And I'm so happy to hear it, because I knew it would be. I've been recommending this game for years. I played it, I think in 2013 was my first time playing this game. This is my 3rd or 4th playthrough. First time on PS4.
Yeah, I immediately replayed it.
Yeah.
Immediately. There is, it's cliche at this point maybe, but there is something truly, you just can't replicate it. What they did at this game. The sense of wonder, at the same time with this sense of tragedy. That is, and there's no words, no one telling you how to feel. It is just the downtime between each Colossus, the world, which evokes so much without saying anything. And I'm actually writing a piece right now on the structure of the game, why the Colossi are ordered the way they are.
Which was a huge part of our discussion, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to recapture some of that here, but the way they tell that story and lead you down this emotional journey and bring you to the ultimate conclusion of whatever you're going to take away from this game, which varies for a lot of people, honestly. The fundamental emotional part is there, but like what you walk away with, this game is so... There's something in it that's akin to reading, something like Moby Dick, where the pieces don't seem to add up when you first, experience it. But when you take a step back after finishing it and see how carefully and meticulously placed every section is, and you realize how they took you to each beat, it's unreal. Down to how Wander grips his sword hilt and the sword flops flaccidly around in his hand, and the way each Colossus is presented to you, how each puzzle works. And the game is fun. Like, the game is fun to play, too. So it's a huge bonus to itself. But the real draw is the story that just explodes to life in your head without any words. And that combination of wonder and tragedy with each plunge of your sword it's something that I struggle to communicate to people. It's something that it's one of the best examples of a game where I'm like, just play this.
And
just
it
play
unfortunately
this
is
game.
not for everyone.
No, not at all.
You've talked a lot about boring games, and this is top of the heap. It's up there.
Yeah,
with
there are some
of the most
extreme-
boring games, like you
lots
mentioned,
of
Red Dead
downtime.
Redemption 2.
Lots of downtime, lots of, just kind of actually just riding to your next objective.
Gone Home is a great example.
Just things, there's not much happening all the time. Really, it's only during the actual fights, and even the fights can be very slow paced sometimes. It's unique, and like you said, not for everybody. This is not a game I'd recommend to everyone, but to those who kind of want to know why this game is still considered one of the games that has propelled, the idea of games as art into the public discourse, you got to play it yourself. It accomplishes something through your actions and your default, what am I going to do as a player? Those default kind of paths we go down, and it actually plays with that and is able to make you question yourself, to question every action you take, but then still deliver something truly beautiful. And I did play the PS4, the Blue Point remake, so I'm
which is
stunning.
Awesome.
Stunning. I would recommend it as the way to play it for sure. So, yeah, that's my number one.
And what mystery that game has created. I bringing him up a third time this episode, but Jacob Geller, he has got an incredible YouTube channel. It's just video essays on video games. And he's got one on the
Last Great Secret.
The Last Great Secret of
Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus. I was going to say The Last Guardian. His episode on The Last Guardian is great too.
And it shows how it's really good at showing
such a huge community.
The way that
strung up around that
the lack of words, but the incredible way that environments in Colossi evoke emotional response and questions are able to develop in players this lust for understanding everything there is in there, and how Blue Point was able to give them something a little special. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. And it's
great. Number one. It would be my number one if I hadn't already played it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy it's yours.
Yeah, it quickly became top 10 favorite games of all time for me. That and Hades this year. This is the first year I can think of where 2017 did it for me as well.
Breath of the Wild
and Hollow Knight. Yep.
Oh, and Hollow Knight.
What a year. Yeah, so apparently pretty recently, but it is really cool for me to be able to play these two games, and as different games as Hades and Shadow of the Colossus are. Incredibly different games, but both have quickly shown themselves to be something really special. And I can't thank you enough for sharing it with me. Yeah.
Happy to hear it, man.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that I can provide something similar to you down the line. It's something really.
It could be
really
Metal Gear
awesome.
Solid 5.
I hope it is.
We'll see.
I love
we will
that game.
see, but it could be that.
I really hope it is.
Yeah.
But
Well, that has been our first Game of the Year episode.
yeah, not bad, man.
Not bad.
We made it.
First, I would say full year. We've not been live for a full year, but we've been working on this since early February.
Actually, it was December 2018. I looked back when we started officially.
Really?
We started working on this December 2018.
What?
Yep. It's been a long time, and we're really grateful for where we're at right now. Obviously, we don't have a huge viewer base, and I could care less a little bit, because
I think
I am so grateful to have the opportunity to creatively express myself and share these games with you. And if it never gets anybody listening to us, this alone is worth it to me. The fact that I played Shadow of the Colossus alongside you, got to share that with you, that's enough for me. But that being said, we really hope that you guys start listening and join us and share games with us.
Absolutely.
Just because we just want more people to be able to do this with. This is something that, Tyler and I are really passionate about, and only a couple other people in our immediate circle really are. And we want people who are excited to share games and, challenge us and try to get us to like games we'd never liked before, look at games in a new way. It's really special to have that and to have a community focused around that instead of just, emptily shouting their opinions, genuinely talking intelligently and wanting to share games and expand other people's horizons. That's really what we want to go for. So I'm hoping, looking at 2021, we get people listening. We hope you can join us. This has been so awesome so far. Can't wait to keep it going.
Absolutely. If you do like what we're doing here, do consider that $2 tier on Patreon. I think that's the only tier on Patreon, right?
No. We got some more early access to content, some live streams once we start actually getting patrons in there.
Oh, yes.
Some good stuff. But really, $2 is where you should be sitting. Getting, just because we want you to be part of the Discord, and obviously the other tiers get you the Discord, but it's just $2. It's $2. It's less than your Starbucks coffee. We just want you to be able to be there with us, and the support really helps us keep that going. So, really grateful for anything you can help us out with. But also, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We also, we're here to listen. We want to share those games with you. So, anything you can do to help is much appreciated.
Absolutely. But thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching our first Unpatched Gaming Game of the Year episode.
Whoop whoop.
Absolutely. Whoop.
Whoop.
We will see you in 2 weeks with one we've been looking forward to for a long while, and that is Pyre, and we got a bit of a surprise for you. If you aren't already in the Discord, we hope you enjoy what we're going for here. A year-long series. Did we announce it last episode?
I don't know, but we're gonna do it.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. We'll do it next week. We got something great, or next episode rather. So do stick around and let us know what you think. And don't forget to share what you love with who you love. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey, and best wishes to you coming into this new year.